this computer. And guys, I've allowed you guys to share my screen at any time. So, okay, so here we go. At the same time, right now, I want to see if I can put up simultaneously on the screen sharing, if I can put that PDF file. Okay. Does this, hold on a second. Where is that file? I'm just trying to see if I can, like if I would split the screen. Well, guys, what I'll do though, if I can't show them both simultaneously, for some reason I can't seem to find my file, so I can't show them simultaneously. I will. We're going to show up. If you guys don't see right now the exercise drawing, right, on your screen?
No.
You don't see it counterclockwise. If I do this now, do you guys see the drawing on the right-hand side here? Or you just see the AutoCAD?
Just the AutoCAD.
Okay, so that's one of the drawbacks of Zoom. I can't seem to split my screen and show two documents at the same time. So that's one of the things that I hope they can overcome one day. But okay, so right now, let's not worry about it. If I need to, I will go to the drawing and then I will, share the drawing and then we'll come back and do the AutoCAD and so on and so on. But if you have the drawing next to you, I will try to describe what I'm doing with the drawing and then we'll, do something. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is, of course, you guys have AutoCAD open on your screen, I hope, okay? So let's just click Start a Drawing. Let's start from the very beginning, Start a Drawing, okay? Okay, and so right now you're starting a drawing. Now, first thing I want to talk to you about is that when you're drawing with AutoCAD, right? AutoCAD does not draw in inches. AutoCAD does not draw in millimeters. AutoCAD draws in AutoCAD units, okay? And of course, the program has a way to convert those AutoCAD units either into millimeters or into inches and feet. So if ever you start a drawing from scratch, you want to make sure that you're working in the right units, and therefore what you can do is go make sure you set the right units for your drawing. Now you can type, okay, first of all, everybody remembers that these are your ribbons here, okay? And on the ribbons you have different commands, okay? This right here, everybody see what I'm pointing to? This right here is the command line. So if you know the command, you can actually type it down here in the command line and AutoCAD will execute that command. And of course, what I like to do is I like to use the icons a lot because I find that if you know where the icons are, it's a little bit faster to draw with AutoCAD. So right now, what I want to do is you can either type in the word units in the command line. And if you're too lazy, what you can do is you can fly this menu out. If you go to Drawing Utilities, okay, and under Drawing Utilities, you will find units, okay? So you can either type the word units in the command line here, or you can fly out the menu. It's up to you. Now, guys, as far as AutoCAD goes, okay, there are different units that you can use. And of course, If you're drawing in metric, you would be using the decimal ones. If you're drawing in imperial, you would either use the architectural ones or the engineering ones. Most likely the architectural ones, because those are the ones that are most common. And you can also have what they call the scientific and the fractional. So right now we are going to do this drawing in imperial. In metric. So therefore we'll leave it as a decimal. Now, since we're going to be drawing in millimeters, we don't need to go to 4 decimal places when it comes to millimeters. So what you can do is you can switch that. You can change the precision to 0. So AutoCAD, if it needs to do a calculation, and after it's done this calculation, needs to round off to a number, it will round it off to the first place. It will not have any decimals. And of course, if you're inserting something, since you're working in metric, you like it to come in millimeters, okay? And that basically sets up the units for this particular drawing, because we are going to be working in metric, we'll be working in millimeters, okay? Now, when you want to put certain angles on your drawing, here are a number of choices that you have, okay? You can have decimal degrees. So in other words, if you want to put in 45.4 degrees, you can actually put that value in as in a decimal. If you, for example, are working in degrees, minutes, and seconds, so instead of having to convert that on your calculator, you can pick this choice here, and then you can actually put in the degrees, minutes, and seconds, and AutoCAD will actually do the calculation. And if you're using grads or radians, if you like to work in radians, pi over 2 pi and all that, and if you like to use surveying units, I personally like to keep it simple. I like to leave it at decimals, okay? As far as precision goes. Now, here is something I want to explain to you, okay? Now, the way AutoCAD works, and I'm going to try to annotate, okay? The way AutoCAD works is that if you notice that here is your screen, okay? And basically, you should know this by now, this is the y-axis. This here is the x-axis. Right now, you're looking at the positive y-axis and the positive x-axis, okay? And basically, you can go all the way to the other side, and that would be the negative x, and you can go down negative y. So that's how you designate positive and negative values for the coordinates that you want to put in for your drawing. Now, when it comes to angles, basically AutoCAD goes counterclockwise. So in other words, if you say 0 degrees, this is 0 degrees. If you say 90 degrees, this is 90 degrees. If you say 180 degrees, well, the 180 degrees will be on the other side. If you say 270. Now, if you prefer working clockwise, in other words, you want to start here at 0 and go to 90, then you just click here and you can do that way. Now, since I am so familiar with the counterclockwise measurements, because that's how I did most of my math and all that, then I leave it like that. But if you prefer working in a clockwise direction, then you can simply put a check mark there and you can work clockwise, okay? Now here, this is for the architects. When it comes to doing renderings and stuff, lighting, we're not going to get into that. And like I said, as far as the directions goes, you can even change for this. You can make the north, you can change it, where 0 is. So in other words, 0 degrees, this is how you would change it. It's up to you. I'm so familiar with, from my math courses that this has always been 0 degrees, this has been 90, so therefore I've always worked counterclockwise and I leave that the way it is. But if you prefer working the other way, this is where you can change that option for yourself. So that basically, we'll talk about the, let me just clear all the drawings. So therefore now, like I said, you should all have this in decimals, you should have this to 0, leave this in degrees, decimal degrees, and leave that at 0, which is good enough. And it's up to you if you want to do it that way. Just if you change this, remember, you're going to have to remember what you did. And therefore, when you prompt for the information, you're going to have to do it accordingly. So if you're happy with that, you press OK. Now, one of the things I like to do with AutoCAD, okay, and guys, one of the things I like to do with AutoCAD is know from the offset that if I'm going to be eventually having to print this on a sheet, okay, I want to make sure that I can use a scale that is commonly used for drawings. In other words, if you're using an imperial, the scales are 1 in 10, 1 in 20, 1 in 25, 1 in 50. Like in other words, these are typical scales that you have in metric. And of course, in imperial, we'll do some imperial drawings also. You have 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, 3/8 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch, 1 inch, and so on. So if you know eventually what scale you want to have your drawing printed to, okay, and you want to make sure that that drawing will eventually fit on the sheet that you're going to be using to print on, then at the very beginning, you should sort of set the limits of how much of this virtual space you'll be able to use so that when you're eventually going to go plot, you'll be able to take this information, this model that you did here, and put it on your paper. Now, a lot of people, what they do is they basically draw all in the model, and then they go to paper space, and then when they get to paper space, they convert it to the scale that they want, and all of a sudden they find out, oh, it doesn't fit anymore, okay? First of all, guys, when I'm talking about scale, does everybody know what scale means, first of all? Who doesn't have any idea what we mean by scale? Could somebody explain to me what scale is to you? Was the concept of scale explained to you in the Drawings 1 class?
Yes.
Okay, so in your own words, Virgil, what is scale?
It's the multiple by which how big or how small the final product is versus the drawing, I guess.
That's close. It's close, but you're missing one key element in your description. But it's close. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's very close. Okay. Okay. Basically, what scale is is that your paper your paper has a certain dimension, right? And let's do it in metric. Okay. So what scale is that my paper has a certain dimension, and that dimension, okay, will, and for every for every unit of measurement that I have on that paper dimension, that will represent how many units that I will actually have for what I'm trying to build. So for example, if I am drawing something at a 1 to 50 scale, for every millimeter that I measure on my piece of paper, that will represent an actual distance of 50 millimeters in real life when this thing is going to get built. So that's what we mean by 1 to 50, 1 to 10. So for every dimension that we have on the paper, the scale represents how much of that dimension will actually be in real life. So basically, if I'm going to want to draw this drawing, let's say I know that I have a certain sheet size that I want to put it on eventually, okay? So one of the things that you're going to have to worry about is what is the printable area of that sheet that you're going to be eventually using so that you can take your drawing and send it to your printer or your plotter and make sure that it fits on that sheet. Now, I want everybody to, up here, I've got an icon called plot, and I'd like everybody to click on that icon. And if you clicked on that icon, this is what pops up. Did you guys plot any drawings last year in Drawings 1? Oh, and guys, by the way, if any of you don't see any of you don't have on your screen what I have on my screen, okay, by all means, tell me to go back and I'll do it again. Okay, so let's all be together at the same pace. Did you guys plot any drawings last year?
Yeah, we did, but I have a question. What's the precision again?
Precision?
Yeah, the like what precision did you put yours at?
Okay, in other words, you're talking about the units?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me cancel this, okay? Now, AutoCAD is a very, very accurate software, okay? And for example, if, I'll give you an example. If I draw a line, okay? Arbitrarily like this, I draw a line, okay? And I want that line to be rounded off to the closest millimeter, okay? Then what happens is that when I go to units, okay? When I go to units, if I tell AutoCAD that when you're dimensioning something for me or you're measuring something for me, whatever that actual dimension is, I don't need that to be the 4 decimal places. So if I accidentally draw something that is 28.87676 millimeters, if this is the precision you want the drawing to be at, AutoCAD will actually put that precision in your dimensions. Okay? Now, when you work in millimeter, especially in our case in civil engineering, okay? If you're working in millimeters, an accuracy of 1 millimeter is accurate enough, okay? As a matter of fact, when we're doing something imperial, anything within up to 1/8 of an inch, which is really 3 millimeters, is still accurate enough, but we'll make the precision 1/16. Because, you know, like if you look at a tape measure, or if you look at a ruler, nobody's gonna be building something within 1/2 a millimeter. So so what we're actually doing, we're telling the programs that eventually when we're gonna start dimensioning and asking for measurements and all that, I want you to round off the number to 0. In other words, give it to me always in millimeters. So that's what the precision is all about. Is that a little clearer?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. So if you don't change it here, AutoCAD will definitely bring it to 4 or 5 or 6 decimal places, whatever it is by default when you start up the program. Okay, now, let me just erase this. Okay, so now, like I said, at the very offset, for example, at your house, you might have a printer, okay? And on that printer, you might be able to put 8.5 by 11 sheets. You might be able to put 11 by, I don't know what size of paper your printer can handle, okay? But if you got, for example, if we were doing that at school, we have a plotter at school. The plotters can handle different paper sizes, okay? So if I go back to plot here, okay? So plotting is basically, since we're not going to be plotting anything on the plotter at school because we're going to be doing this all online, okay? We are going to actually always plot our drawing to a PDF, okay? One of the PDF, like here you'll notice that you've got a number of choices, okay? You got Microsoft PDF. I don't like to use that because that is limited to,
Sorry, sir.
pardon?
How did you get the plot again?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked. So let me cancel this, okay? At the very top here on the first menu bar, you see where I'm pointing? Look, see my cursor here?
Yeah.
Follow my cursor and at the very top, you'll see something that looks like a little printer.
Okay, perfect. I got it.
Okay, and that's, now you could do it from here. I like to do it from there. You could, like the only problem with AutoCAD is that sometimes there's 3 or 4 ways to do the same thing, okay? I like to do it from there. Or if you want to remember the command, if in the command line, if you type in plot, you'll get the same thing. But I like to use the icons, saves me some time. So plot. Now, one of the first thing AutoCAD wants to know is that what are you going to be using either as a printer or as a plotter, okay? And therefore you fly out this menu and here are all your choices. Now here we don't have very many because as a matter of fact, you see in my case, my printer is already, it's already been set up. So this is my printer at home. If you have a printer at home, and if your printer is set up with your computer, you'll see your printer here, okay? Now, what I like to do in our case, whenever you guys are going to be doing an assignment, you're going to be doing it with in a PDF. So let's start with the PDF here, okay? So everybody pick AutoCAD PDF. Take the general, it's good enough. It doesn't need to be high quality printing. It doesn't have to be the smallest file and so on. Just take the general one. That's good enough. And that's, so in other words, when you're ready to plot, AutoCAD will take your drawing, convert it into a PDF, and you'll be able to email it. You'll be able to send it off as a PDF. And of course, today, everybody can open a PDF file, and it's very easy for people to have, because unless if you send it as an AutoCAD drawing, if the guy doesn't have AutoCAD, he won't be able to open the drawing. Now, once you decided what you're going to be plotting with, okay, the next thing AutoCAD wants to know is what is the paper size that you will eventually use to plot your drawing on or print your drawing on. Now, I don't know if they explain the different paper sizes that are available in the industry, but basically the paper sizes go from A to E, A being the smallest, E being the biggest, okay? So basically E is a sheet that measures 30 inches by 42, okay? And so here's your A size. Basically, A is the size of a letterhead, or like the sheet that that you have in your printer. And then you have B size, 11 by 17, and then you have C size, and you have D size, and so on. Okay. So right now, let's say that we know that we would want to have this drawing plotted on a C size sheet. Now, the reason why they have, like here, ANSI is 22 by 17. And ANSI C 17 by 22. It all depends on how you're going to feed your paper into the plotter. If you want to put the 22-inch sheet in the plotter, you would take 22 by 17. If you want to put the 17, as far as the plotting goes, it would take the same amount of time. It doesn't make a difference. But I want to show you that there's a slight difference when you choose one in terms of what you can actually print on it. So for example, if I pick 17 by 22, okay? Now, I want you to, okay, forget about this. Here you see that you have inches, okay? I like to, since we're working in millimeters, okay? Let's change this to millimeters. So AutoCAD will give you the size of the paper in millimeters, okay? So instead of you having to convert in your own head, you just let AutoCAD do the calculation for you. Now, this paper, okay, if you hover over here, it tells you what the actual size of the paper is. It's 31.8 by 558.8 millimeters. So that's the actual size of the paper. So in other words, when you're going to buy these sheets, they will measure exactly 17 by 22. Now, the problem is that that's the sheet size, but when you're going to actually want to print on it or plot on it, this is what they call the printable area, right here. So the printable area is smaller than the actual paper size. And that makes sense because the machine needs to keep part of that paper so that it can handle the paper while it's doing the plotting. And therefore the printable area is always smaller than the actual paper size. And that's what you're going to be limited to how much information you can put on that sheet of paper. Now, if I want to, for example, let's stick to, this is my printable area here. Sorry, I should leave it there, okay? I have a printable area of 421.8 millimeters by 524.8 millimeters. Now you can do this with your own paper at home. In other words, if you put an A size or a letter size paper, the letter size paper is going to be 8.5 by 11 inches or whatever it is in millimeters. I don't know off the top of my head. And then if you hover over this little diagram, you'll know what is the printable area that your printer is going to allow you to print on. So you can do this with your own printer at home. It doesn't matter. Now, what this means is that physically, I got 421.8 millimeters of paper space in one direction, okay, along the x-axis, or like it doesn't matter because I can turn it around. And I got 524.8 millimeters of paper in the other direction. So if I want to eventually want to plot my drawing at a scale of 1 to 50, I simply take these and multiply them by 50. And that tells me how much of the space I can use virtually so that eventually when I shrink it down to a 1 to 50 scale, it will actually fit on my paper. And that's how you determine right off the bat. So for example, I've already did the math. Like for example, I'm gonna take out my calculator. I'll do the math for you. So for example, if this is the sheet size we're gonna be using, and I have a printable area of 421.8 Okay, multiply that by 50. Multiply that by 50. So I know I can put up to 2,090 drawing units in one direction. Okay, 2,090 in one direction. And then if I do the other one, 524.8, I could put 26,240 in the other direction. So basically, I could actually put in terms of drawing units for AutoCAD, okay, 21,000 in one direction and 26,240 in the other direction, okay? So that's, I'm gonna keep these two numbers and I'll tell you what we can do with this. Now, I'm gonna just cancel this for now, okay? Cancel this for now. And I'm gonna take that information, okay? And first thing I wanna explain to you about AutoCAD is that AutoCAD has this nice feature whereby you can put a lot of different things on a lot of different layers. Layers are basically like transparent sheets that you can draw on, and you can have the sheets piled one on top of the other so that when you're looking at them, you're going to see the full picture of what you're drawing. Did you guys do anything with layers last year? Yes or no? Just let me know.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so let's okay. So here, I'm going to point, see here where it says layer properties. Does everybody see that? Everybody okay? I'd like you to click on that. And this is what opens up. In other words, this is the layer property, okay? Now, AutoCAD starts off by creating itself one layer, and that's layer 0, okay? And now you can create as many layers as you want. The more layers you create, the more you can control how you can manipulate your drawing. So right now, what I'd like you to do, okay, I'd like you to hit that icon there where it says create a new layer. Okay, now you can rename this layer. Okay, so I'm going to change, I'm going to have an overall border on my drawing. Okay, so I'm going to call this one border, B-O-R-D-E-R. Okay, so I'm going to call this layer border. I'm going to use this just to make my border. So for whatever reason, I don't want the border to be printed one day, I can actually turn it off and so on, okay? So that's going to be the border. Now, this here, I'll explain this further on, but this is like, you can leave the layer on or you can turn it off. In other words, whatever is drawn on that layer, you can see it or not see it. On, freeze, and thaw is very similar to on and off. In other words, the only difference is that if you freeze as opposed to turning it off, it doesn't regenerate every time you're zooming in and out of your drawing. Here you can actually lock the layer, so if you happen to be picking something, everything on that layer will not be affected by what you're doing. And this is, it's plottable, okay? Now, these are the different colors that you can assign to your layers, okay? Now, there are a multitude of colors here, okay? Now, I do not suggest you take any of these because some plotters don't recognize all these colors in here. Stick to this primary color right in here, okay? So right now, this layer was created with the color white. White because we're using a black screen, okay? Now, I like, for example, I'm gonna change it to magenta, okay? So every time I draw on this layer, everything that I draw is gonna have a magenta color. So I'm gonna pick magenta. So I'm gonna press OK. Now, the other thing is that it's gonna have a continuous line, which means that it's not gonna have any dithering. And as far as the line weights go, well, I'm gonna double click on that. And since I like my borders to be a nice heavy line, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick anywhere between 30 and 35 so that when the plotter plots my drawing, I will get a nice border around my so pick one of these two, doesn't matter which one you pick, okay? And that's going to be the line thickness. So I can start assigning line thicknesses to the different layers. And the nice thing about drawing is that if the different entities have different line thicknesses, it gives the drawing depth and it makes it more readable. And that's the nice thing about playing with line weights. And I will always stress the line weights in this course, and you'll start developing a better finesse on what to do with it. So for now, I'm going to press OK. Now, the last thing you want to do is you want to tell AutoCAD that you want to make this a current layer. So by clicking here, it makes it current. That means that whatever you're going to be doing right now, it's going to be drawn on your layer border. So press, you can close that now. Now, remember I told you we kind of try to set how much of this virtual space we can eventually put on a C-size sheet. Well, what I like to do is I like to use this drawing command here where it says rectangle. Okay? So I like to take that and specify the first point. So the first point I'm going to be specifying is 0, 0. So 0, 0 is the origin. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell AutoCAD to go 26,000 millimeters in one direction and go 21,000 millimeters in the other direction. So as far as the second point goes, I'm going to say 26,000, comma, and 21,000, enter. Okay. Now, of course, you don't see it anymore, but if you do, so basically, now if I do a zoom, type in the letter Z, that's for zoom. Okay. And I type in the letter Alt, A. Now what happens is you start seeing the border of your drawing. So what this does now is that it tells me that as long as I draw within this border, okay, if I take this model and I want to put it on a C-size sheet and at a 1:50 scale, as long as all the entities that I draw stay within this border, it will eventually end up being what I want it to be. It's going to work. I won't have a problem that it doesn't fit, it's too small, it's too big, and so on and so on. So this is the best way to set up at the very beginning to know what you're going to eventually have to, make your drawings, like, let's say, readable and transferable to other people, whether it's in a PDF format or in an actual hard copy, like if you know what size of sheet that your drawings are going to eventually be on. Now, guys, this works for C-size sheets. This works, like at home, I'm very limited on what I can print because I have a printer. The only thing that I have are 8.5 by 11. And I always set my drawing limits so that when I print at, for example, 1 in 10, 1 in 50, whatever, it will fit on that sheet. So right now, this is, excuse me, this is the actual amount of virtual space that I can use so that when I take this drawing and send it on a C-size sheet and I want to plot it at a 1:50 scale, it will fit on that sheet, okay? Now, I know this is a little heavy for the very beginning, but I wanted to give you the appreciation that this is what you can do with AutoCAD, and this is what you should be doing with AutoCAD. You control at the offset what you will eventually end up with. And if you don't want to do that, then you just draw. And then at the end, you can take your model and change it to a paper scale, specify the scale, and pray that it fits on your sheet. That's up to you. I like to teach you guys this way so you can control what's going to happen at the end and not hope that it's going to work at the end because you didn't think of it at the offset. Okay, so this is,
Sir?
Yes.
Can you show us like quick again? Like how did you do that? Like you did border, right?
Like in other words, what I
Typed in the
did
command line, or
did you create a layer called border?
Yeah.
And then if you look up here, is border what you see up here in this window?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're on the right layer, okay? So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna erase this, okay? Okay, hold on, erase. Okay. So basically, like I said, what I did is I went to look at the printable area that I had on my paper, right? It told me that I have 421.8 millimeters in one direction, and I had, I forgot what it was in the other direction. And then I just said, well, I can put 50, let's say call it drawing units, or 50 millimeters in each millimeter of paper space that I'm going to eventually have available for me. So I did the math, okay? And I came up with 21,000 in one direction, 26,000 in the other direction. Those are going to be the outermost limits of where I should be making my drawing, okay? So what I did is I said, okay, so let me start by putting a border so I can visualize in this virtual screen how far I can go out to be able to make sure that eventually I can put this on the paper that I have. So what I did is I said, the easiest way to do that is take this command here, rectangle.
Okay, rectangle.
Rectangle, okay. Now rectangle is that I could have gone here, okay. But I like to give it the coordinates. So I put in the coordinate 0, comma 0. In other words, start at the origin. That's what I'm telling the program to do because this is the origin down here, okay. Enter, so that would be the first point. And as far as the second point goes, well, I'm going to give it the value that I calculated. So it's 26,000 in one direction. Don't put any commas, put 26,000, 26000. Then you put your comma. Then you put 21,000, 000, enter, and there you go. And you've created your border. And then when you're going to plot this on your drawing, that border is going to be, you know, outlining your drawing properly. And is that okay now?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Now, guys, I do this only for this in this lecture, okay? All the assignments, I'm going to be sending you a template that I've already set up for you at the different scales. So you just take that template and you draw on it, okay? I'm doing this so that you have an understanding what you can do with AutoCAD. Now, once I've set up, you know, once I set up the limits, what I call the limits of my drawings, in other words, I can visually see how far I can go in the X and Y direction of this virtual space. Without this, I would have no idea. I could be drawing, and then eventually I can be going past these boundaries. And when I want to go and plot this on my C-size sheet, it would not work. So by doing this at the offset, I can actually see the virtual limitations that I have with what I want to do eventually with my drawing, okay? Now, once this is done, okay, what I like to do, okay, is I like to start setting up my grid. Now, if you notice that, now, I hope you guys have that sketch in front of you. I'm not gonna go back and forth. I have it, I can see it myself on my screen, but I hope you guys can see the exercise drawing that I sent you. Is everybody okay with that? Because if you don't see that, then you have a hard time following what I'm trying to do, okay? So right now, I want to set up my grid, okay? In other words, my grid lines. So like I said, I like to create many layers when I'm drawing because by creating the layers, it gives me more control on how to manipulate the drawing. So right now, we're gonna go back to the layer manager, go back to the layers properties here. Everybody, I'm gonna hover over it, okay? Click, and now we're gonna create another layer, okay? So we're gonna create a new layer. And this time, I'm gonna call this grid. G-R-I-D, okay? Now, as far as the grid goes, you know, guys, this is up to you. Like I said, I'll talk to you about these afterwards. I'll show you what these do to your layers. Okay, like this turns it on and off. Like, okay. Now, as far as the colors go, okay, I like to make my grids in red. That's my fetish. You can pick any color you want, okay? And then after that, as far as the line type, I don't like to use continuous lines for grids because you've noticed that whenever you have center lines, they seem to be dittered. So therefore, I'm going to change this, okay? Now here I only have one choice. I have a solid line. So what I can do is, so first of all, click on line, okay, and click on load. These are all the different line types that are in the program. Okay, so you just go down and get a feeling of what you have, okay? I've used a lot of these, okay? Like sometimes you want to do something out of zigzags, tracks, and so on and so on. You can use dots, and okay? So I like to, for example, when it comes to center lines, I like to use center line, okay? Because that's what grid lines are. They're usually the center of what you'll be placing on your drawing. So if you like that, or if you want to have something that's different, let's pick that one for now, okay? Put OK. Now make sure you pick it here, make sure it's blue, press OK. Now if you look here, it's changed the line type to center line. Now of course you don't want it to be thick, you just want that center line to be in the background so that you can see it on your drawing, but it doesn't need to be predominant. So as far as the line thickness goes, I like to set that to about 0.5 millimeters. So that is just very faintly there. People know where it is, but it's not, it doesn't have that much of importance. And I'm gonna press OK. So like I said, so now, and then on top of that, since I'm gonna be drawing grid lines, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set my grid line as being the current layer, okay? Now guys, don't be afraid that now I just wanna show you what happens, okay? Just wanna show you what happens that here's my border. If for whatever reason I wanted to not print my border with my drawing, then I can literally just turn it off and you don't see it anymore. That's the nice thing about layers, that you can manipulate parts of your drawing as you'd like, okay? And it gives you the advantage of having more control over your drawing. But of course, I want to see it, so I'm going to turn it back on. Okay, the freeze thaw is exactly the same as turning it on and off. The only difference is that the freeze thaw is that every time you zoom in and out, that layer doesn't get regenerated. So it saves you some computer time. But today the computers are so strong that you don't have to worry about that anymore. But they still kept that feature. Now the lock is that, let's say I want to select something and I want to erase it. By locking the layer, for example, now that this layer is locked, I cannot pick it. So for example, if I want to erase it, I can't do anything to it. So that's what the lock does. That's a nice feature. So by having things on a layer, and all of a sudden you don't want to pick those entities and you want to do something else with it, you can lock the layer and it won't get affected by what you're doing while you're working on your drawing. And of course, if you don't want it to be printed, you can change here that you don't want that layer to be printed for some reason. Okay, you can change whether you want it to be printable. I leave them all printable for now. And that's it. So now I can close this. Okay, so now I'm ready to draw some grids, okay? Does everybody know how to draw a line with AutoCAD? I'm assuming you do, right? Now, the nice thing with AutoCAD is that at the offset, I don't have to really worry where I'm at, okay? I don't have to worry where I'm at in terms of starting my drawing because I have the move command, I can move things around. I have a lot of editing commands that I can use to, finally get to whatever I want as a final product. So for the first thing I'm gonna do for my grid lines, okay, and the grid lines are the ones that are where the axes are. In other words, with A, B, C, D. So I'm gonna use the line command here, okay? And, oops, not the polyline, sorry. We'll talk about polyline in 2 weeks from now. The line command, okay? So the line command. So I'm just gonna draw a line arbitrarily from here. Now, guys, you notice like when I'm drawing, I can draw at any angle, okay? Now, if you don't want to draw at any angle and you like to draw always at 90 degrees in one direction, the other direction, if you come down to here on the bottom menu bar, everybody sees where I'm pointing? You see that little right angle here? If you turn that on, then when you're trying to draw something, it will automatically draw it at 90 degrees. It does not go, so in other words, it's either horizontal or vertical. And since our drawings are mostly all perpendicular to each other, I like to leave that feature on. I'll turn it off if I need to draw something at an angle, but I like to leave that on. And that's gonna always draw what they call orthogonally, in other words, vertically or horizontally, okay? Now I'm gonna press escape. Now you'll notice that, remember we had picked, let me just, okay. Remember we had picked the, where is that? Okay, remember we had picked a line that had dithering. In other words, there was a little space there, a little space there. Remember, that's the line type that we picked. But if I look at this line, if I zoom in on this line, you notice that it looks like a solid line, okay? And that's because the line type scale of this drawing has to be modified. Now, guys, at the command line down here, like at the command line, if everybody sees what I'm talking about, at the command line, I'd like you to type in the word LTSCA. Well, you'll see it, the command's gonna come up, LT scale, okay? Now, right now, the line type scale is 1, okay? I'm drawing at about 50 to 1, and therefore I'm gonna change that to 50 and see what happens. And I still don't see any dithering, okay? So that means I'm gonna have to change that a little bit more. So I'm gonna hit the enter button again. Okay, I'm gonna change it to 200. You'll notice that as I change the line type scale, I start seeing the dithering. Everybody sees that? So whenever you have a line that's got dithering, in other words, it's got some space in between the lines, and it shows up solid, the command that you have to use to modify that is line type. That's one way to do it, and that's going to change the line type scale for your overall drawing. So that's going to be a general change. But if ever you want to change it just for one line, okay, you can actually pick the line, right-click, go to Properties, okay, and here you will see that you can change the scale of the line. I'm just trying to find where it is. Okay, right now, of course, I've changed the overall, okay. Okay, so here I can either change it individually like this, or I can change it globally for everything. Okay, so this is where you change the scale either for one line only, or you change them for all, okay? So that's something I wanted to show you. Anyways, I'm gonna be doing this over again for you guys, but okay. So right now, if I'm happy with that dithering, then I'll leave it like that, okay?
Could you show us again how you select? Because I'm unable to like try and get the other, like the center line. It's always coming up the other line.
Solid. Okay, so if it's coming up solid, okay, like I said, you have a number of choices. Okay, one, you can change the line type scale for all the dithered lines on your drawing, or you can change it individually for each particular line. Okay, so first of all, I want to clear up this. I just want to.
I just can't figure out how to select another layer, basically.
Pardon?
I just can't figure out how to select the second layer that we chose.
Okay, so what I did is that, see here the command line at the bottom of the screen? This is where you can type in all the commands for AutoCAD. If you know them all by heart, you can type them all there and you'll be able to execute a command. That's number one. So this is what they call the command line in here, okay? Now, what I'd like you to do is type in the LTSC, and as you're typing, the different properties come up. So you see line type scale, okay? Now, right now, I have a scale factor of 200. If I want to increase the dithering, I keep increasing the scale. So for example, if I would put here 400, in this value here, I would put 400. I'm just going to show you what's going to happen. You see what happens? The dithering, in other words, the blank space becomes wider and wider and wider. Okay, so you play with it until you find what you like as a final product. Okay, I'm not saying that there's a set rule to this. It's up to you how you visually believe that. Okay, I find that that's a nice, that's for me is adequate. Okay, and I wouldn't modify it more than that. All I'm trying to show you is that whenever you pick a line that has dithering means that you have a solid line, you have a space, a solid line, and if all of a sudden you're drawing with AutoCAD and it shows up solid, that's because your line type scale is not properly adjusted for the drawing that you're doing, and that's how you adjust it with AutoCAD. You can either adjust it with the command line type scale, LT scale, or you can go into properties and adjust the line type scale right there for each separate line. Like I said, what you do is you pick the entity. Okay, you right click, that's the menu that pops up. You go to properties, and this is where you change the line type scale. Okay, in other words, you start increasing the number until you start seeing the dithering as it pleases you, as you want it to eventually get plotted or printed in your final drawing. Okay, so now I've drawn my first line. Okay, now do you guys see the spacing of the axes on the example drawing that I sent you? Can anybody tell me what the spacing is of the axes going?
4,600.
Those are the horizontal ones, but I'm drawing the vertical ones right now.
Oh, it's 6,500.
6,500. Everybody sees that? Okay. Now, whenever I need to put a line exactly 6,500 millimeters away from an existing line, my favorite command, my favorite command that I like to use is this one right here. Okay, this command is offset. You probably use it in AutoCAD.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to click on this. Okay. Okay. Now, guys, what I want you to start realizing with AutoCAD is every time I pick a command, I like to go down to the command line at the bottom. And okay, what do you guys see right now at the bottom of the command line? Do you see what I see? In other words, offset, specify the offset distance. So I can either go through something, I can erase something, and go to a layer, or I can give it a, okay, I can give it a specific value. Okay, so right now I want that line to be 6,500 millimeters away from that line. So I'm going to type in 6,500. I'm going to click enter. Okay, now it says select object to, okay, I want to select this. And then I tell in which direction, I tell the program in which direction I want that line to be offset. Okay, so here I'm going to click there. And now that line is exactly 6,500 millimeters away from the other line. Now, since in this, I kept it simple, okay? Since the next line is also 6,500, okay? I'm going to take this one and do it there, and then take the last one and do it there. So right now, okay, right now, my grid lines, I believe, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so right now I put down my 3 vertical grid lines. Everybody okay with that? Guys, I can tell you that offset is one of my favorite commands. It allows me to put something precisely where I want it with respect to something else, okay? You want me to do that over again? Or is everybody comfortable with that? And guys, by all means, we're all here to learn, guys. I can repeat this over and over again until we all have it correctly.
Sorry, sir, could you do it again?
Sure, okay.
Thank you.
So basically, I'm going to erase what I've done, okay? Oh yeah, guys, okay. I don't know if you learned this in drawings 1, okay? Whenever there's an entity on my drawing, an entity can be either a circle, a line, a text, whatever it is, a dimension, I call those entities, okay? Now, I just want to show you that, of course, if you want to pick an entity, I can pick them individually with my, this is called a pick box. Everybody knows that, okay? So I can pick my entities with a pick box. Now, the other way you can pick entities is either by window or by crossing. And let me show you the difference between window and crossing, okay? Now, if I want to pick something by window, I have to create a window. So in other words, I pick a point, I release, and then I pick another point. So the entity that I want to pick has to be completely within my window for it to get picked. So for example, okay, if I pick window, in other words, window goes from left to right. That's window. So if I do this and I do this, you'll notice nothing gets picked. Why? Because all my entities are outside of that box. Even if it's only one side that is outside my box, Windows will not pick that entity. So Windows goes from left to right. Now, crossing is the opposite. Crossing means I'm going to make a window and I'm going to go from right to left. Now, the thing about crossing is that in this one, anything that crosses my window will get picked. Okay? So, and you'll see that. So sometimes I will use crossing because I want to be able to draw as small a window as possible. Sometimes I will use window because I only want to pick certain things, okay, without picking anything else. So to pick by windows, you go from left to right, and to pick by crossing, you go from right to left. And that's the difference, okay? So one is windows, one is crossing, and of course you can pick it individually, okay? And the nice thing about AutoCAD is that you can also create a fence. So if I pick a pin and I hold down my pick button, I can actually create a fence. So that's the nice thing about AutoCAD. That's a fence, okay? So those are basically the most common way of picking entities, okay? And like you can practice. If you don't want to pick a fence, you pick a point, release your pick button, okay? So, and the nice thing, like I said, if I have a fence, I can pick a fence, right? And all of a sudden I can, okay, so that's, now let me, what I should have done is I should have picked this, erase it, okay? Oops, sorry. What happened here? Anyway, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so I'm going to erase that. Okay. So now for the offset command, you can type in the word offset at the command line. So if you know the commands by heart, you can actually type them in on the command line down here. Okay. Or I like to use my icon, and this here is the offset icon. So I pick that. And then as soon as I pick a command, I always go down to the command line, see what. Okay, now you'll notice by default, when I first did this, it didn't have a value. AutoCAD will always keep the last value that you set your offset in these brackets here. So whatever you see in here, okay, this is what AutoCAD is going to be using as a default value. If you want to change that, you'd have to change the value. In other words, just type something in here. So for example, this is pretty redundant, 6,500, it's going to be exactly the same value. So now, once I tell what distance I wanted to offset the entity that I'm going to pick, I pick it and I show in which direction. Like you can either go, okay, so in other words, now this is, I can go all the way out here, but it's only going to go off 65, okay? 65 and 65. Now guys, I strongly suggest that before you go on, okay, to make sure you haven't made a mistake, because sometimes you might type in the wrong value and all that, okay? Especially when it comes to your grids, make sure that they're placed accurately on your drawing, because everything that you're going to be locating on your drawing will be with respect to the grid. So the grid becomes primarily the most important thing that has to be accurately placed on your drawing. And one of the things you can do is you can go to measurement here, okay? And pick a quick measurement. What I like about quick measurements is that quick measurement gives you right away, tells you the distance between the entities, okay? Since I don't have any in this direction, well, it shows me what it is, the overall. So this is a quick way of making sure that, oh, I got 65 there, 65 there, 65 there. Oh, that's exactly what I want, so I'm happy with that. Now that I've drawn my vertical grid lines, okay, or my axes, I will go and draw my horizontal ones, okay? Now, I'm going to draw a line, and I'm going to draw it till about there. Now, you notice I don't really worry, oh, okay. Now, if I want this line to be exactly the same as that line, I can either go and change the, I can go and change the line type, or I can tell AutoCAD to simply match the properties. I want this line to be the base, and then I can match the properties of that line and match the properties. And that's the fastest way I can do it with AutoCAD. okay? So if ever I do something and I want to match the properties of something else, I have this command called match properties up here, okay? And I'll have exactly the same properties to all the entities that I've matched it to. Now, the same thing that I did to space my vertical grid lines, I'll do the same thing for the horizontal one. I will use the offset command, okay? And of course, the distance is no longer 6,500. According to my drawing, the distance is 4,600. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the distance to 4,600. Okay, so now it tells me to pick the entity I want to offset, the direction, pick the entity I want to offset, the direction, pick the entity I want to offset, the direction. Okay. Now don't worry about the fact that those lines don't intersect. Okay. I'm not worried about that because there's all kinds of editing commands that I can use to, okay. So now I do want these lines to meet up with these lines here, okay? So the fastest way for me to do that, okay? The fastest way for me to do that is simply extend these lines to this one here. So of course, since I want to extend the lines, there's a command in AutoCAD right here, okay? This is trim, and behind trim, if you click the little triangle, you have extend. So up here next to erase, you have trim and you have extend, okay? Now, so it tells me select objects, okay? It wants me to select, okay? So basically, I need to select objects. This is what I want to extend it to. And then these are the objects I want to, oops, sorry. Okay, and by crossing now, those lines intersect, and that's good. Now, if, like I said, that's the easiest way to extend the lines. Like if you want me to do that over again, guys, right next to the erase command, okay, you have two commands here. There's one behind the other. One is the trim command. I'll show you how to use the trim command, and show you how to use the extend command, okay? So there's the trim command and the extend command. I could undo what I just did. Where's that undo? I don't see my undo. Oh, here, undo. Oh. Okay, undo. Oh. Well, oh, sorry, this is the undo for, not the undo for AutoCAD, it's the undo for Zoom. Sorry, I thought it's behind this. There's my undo. There. Okay, so guys, the extend command, right? Extend, okay. Select objects. And what do you want to extend? You want to extend that. So therefore, and that's extended. Now that I've got my grid, okay, that I'll be able to place things accurately, okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to be able to put in those bubbles on top of my grid so that when I'm working on my drawing, I want to make sure that when I zoom in, and I happen to be wanting to do something between A and B and so on, I know that I'm looking at the right part of the drawing. So the next thing I like to do is I like to put in my bubbles up here, okay? So again, since I like to do different things on different layers, I'm gonna put this down here. What I'm gonna do is go back to the layer property, okay? You'll see, we're gonna create a layer for everything, okay? We're gonna create a layer, okay? Click, open up the layer properties. Again, create a new layer. Okay, let's call this bubble, okay? B-U-B-B-L-E. Like I give it names that I can remember, okay? Now, of course, I don't know. Let's make this, let's use cyan. Cyan's a nice color, like I said. I have certain fetishes for certain colors. You can make them whatever color you want. It makes no difference because when you're going to be printing your drawing, you're going to be printing it in monochrome, and it's all going to become in black. So you're going to have black lines. So it makes no difference unless you're printing with a colored plotter, and then you can actually get it colored. Very rarely people do that. Now, the other thing is that you don't want this to be a center line. You want this to be a continuous line for your bubbles. So you're going to change that back to continuous. Okay, and the bubbles, as far as the line weight goes, well, you might want to have them just a little bit thicker than your grid lines. So let's just make them 0.9. So therefore, they're going to be slightly heavier than your grid lines, okay? So then, of course, set it as your current layer. Now, if you forget, if you close this, okay, if you close this, and you happen to forget to set that as your current layer, don't worry, you can simply fly the menu out here, go pick it here, and now you set it, it's as if you set it as a current layer. So whatever's in this window here, that's the layer that you're currently working on. Now, of course, a bubble is simply a circle. So we are going to be using the circle command, okay, to be able to put in that bubble. So here's a circle command. Now, when it comes to AutoCAD, okay, AutoCAD has a number of options to draw circles. You can pick the center and give it a radius. You can pick the center and give it a diameter. You can pick 2 points, and AutoCAD will draw we'll draw the circle in between there, okay? Or you can pick 3 points and so on and so on. So it's all up to you on how you want to draw your circle. So if I pick center and diameter, I gotta remember, okay? So right now, what I'm gonna do is it asks me, where is the center point on my, so I'm gonna put the center of the circle for now, I'm gonna put it right here at that endpoint, okay? Now guys, when it comes to bubbles, I want you to understand something is that the bubbles should not take up more, excuse me. Sorry, I just need to. The bubbles should not take more than, what is it, 3/8 of an inch, 10 millimeters of paper space, okay? So if I'm taking up 10 millimeters of paper space and I'm going to want to, and I'm drawing a 1:50, then the diameter of the circle should be no bigger than 500 millimeters. So that's how I know how big to make my bubble. So right now, when it tells me what's the diameter, I'm gonna put in 500, enter, and that should be the size of your bubble. So like when you actually end up printing this bubble, okay? When you actually end up printing this bubble, it will be at the right amount of paper space. In other words, it won't take up more than 10 millimeters of paper space because you've drawn it at a 1:50 scale and you made the diameter 150. Now, don't make the mistake of taking center and radius, putting a 500 millimeter radius, and all of a sudden you're gonna have a 1,000 millimeter diameter. Then it's gonna be twice too big. Now, of course, guys, did you guys learn about O-snaps with AutoCAD? Tell me yes or no. Did anybody give me an answer? Did you learn about O-snaps?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. You guys didn't? Okay.
Okay, in other words, who hasn't learned anything about object? O-snap stands for object snaps. Just don't be afraid. Let me know, because this way. Okay, now, I want you guys to go to the bottom menu here, okay? That's O-snap or object snap, okay? And I want you to click, okay? I want you to right click on that icon, okay? And I want you to pick the very bottom, object snap settings. Now here, guys, you'll notice that all of the object snaps have been turned on. So in other words, okay, right now, I will not pick any object snap, okay? And I do suggest that when you start a drawing, make sure that you select all. Turn them all on. Like I don't use all of them, but I use most of them, okay? So in other words, what you're telling AutoCAD is that when I want to snap to a particular point on my drawing, I can either get an endpoint, I can either get a midpoint, I can either get a center point, I can either get a geometric center. I'll explain what geometric center is, okay? I can pick an actual point, which the AutoCAD calls a node. I could pick one of the quadrants of the circle. I can pick where two lines intersect. I could pick an extension. In other words, pick a point, extend, and start from there. I can pick an insertion point of a block. I can pick perpendicular to something, tangent to something, nearest to something, and apparent intersection. Now, apparent intersection is when you're drawing in 3D and the two lines seem to apparently intersect. I know that you can actually pick that, okay? Since we're not drawing in 3D, we don't have to worry about that. You can even turn it off if you want. And you can pick parallel to something. So I do suggest that when you're working with AutoCAD, that these things are all turned on so you can go and pick the right object and snap to it. So AutoCAD will precisely go to where you want to go to in your drawing. Once you've done that, you press OK, okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to take the circle here, and of course, I want to move it to this endpoint. So what I'm going to do is I take the move command. The move command is right up there, okay? I'm going to take the move command. I'm going to pick the point, okay? Select object, okay? Now, where's my base point? Well, I'm going to go pick. Well, first of all, I got to turn on my O snaps. Now they're on. So you see now that's the quadrant of that circle. I'm going to take that quadrant and move it to that endpoint. So now AutoCAD has precisely put that circle right at the endpoint of my grid line.
Sir?
Yeah.
What is the diameter of your circle again?
500.
500. Okay, thanks.
Because you need, like, remember this for the rest of your life. If ever you're going to be doing something with AutoCAD, I don't care whether you're doing it in imperial or in metric. The bubbles should never take more than, in metric, 10 millimeters of paper space, and in imperial, no more than 3/8 of an inch of paper space. And then depending on the scale that you're going to eventually plot your drawing, then you do the multiplication and decide how big you're going to make your bubbles. So here I'm drawing to 50 to 1, and therefore that means for every 1 millimeter of paper space, I could put 50 millimeters of drawing units. Therefore, for 10 millimeters, I make it 500. Now, what I like, sorry?
Where do you find the snap the button?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't hear very
Where
clearly.
did you find the button for to move the circle?
Oh, okay. First of all, did you turn all your O snaps on at the bottom of your screen? See where I'm pointing right now?
Yeah.
Did you right click on that and get and turn this on and make sure that they were all on here?
Yes.
Okay, so that's okay. Then what you do is you take the move command, right?
Mm-hmm.
You pick what you want to move, right? Press, or you can right click or press enter. And then it says, okay, where do you want to start from? In other words, what I did is I went and I picked that quadrant when it was down here. I picked that quadrant point and then I moved it all the way to the end point.
Okay, yeah.
Okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
But, and you know, it's like every circle has 4 quadrants, okay? So you can always pick exactly what you want to do. Okay, so now that I've got my bubble, okay, I want to put in the name of that axis. So let's keep going. Oh, sorry guys, just to let you know, this class goes until what time tonight? We might as well talk about this. I forgot to talk about this before.
6.
This class goes from I don't even remember.
1 to 6.
1 to 3?
6.
1 to 6. In other words, it's 5 hours, right?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, my rule of thumb is very simple, okay? For every 1 hour of lecture, we should have 10 minutes of break. You understand? And how I came up with that simple proportion is very simple. You know, like when you have a class that's an hour and a half long, I don't know if that's in your humanities class or wherever. Do you have classes that are an hour and a half long at school? Do you have courses that are only an hour and a half long?
Yeah, sometimes longer.
I know, but I'm just saying that the shortest one you have is an hour and a half, because then it's an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, and so on, right? And they allow you 15 minutes travel time between one course and the other. So in theory, they let you 15 minutes before. And therefore, I've used that to kind of say, well, for every half hour of lecture, you should have 5 minutes of travel time or a break, okay? So what I like to do is, like, for example, we start at 1 o'clock, okay? So in a 5-hour class, I like to give you guys at least 50 minutes of break. Does that sound okay? Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Yep.
So what I like to do is, like, for example, we start at 1 o'clock and we'll go until 2:40. Is that okay? And then at 2:40, we'll take a 20-minute break up to about 3 o'clock. Is that okay with everybody? And then at 3 o'clock, we'll go until 5:30 and then we call it a day. Is that good?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, any objections? Now guys, this first lecture is the most daunting one, is where I teach you a lot of commands and so on, okay? After that, every week, I'm just gonna be expanding a little bit more, and what you're actually gonna be doing, you're gonna be spending most of your time working on your assignments during the class, okay? So bear with me that the first lecture, you're gonna get a lot of stuff. I hope you guys are learning quite a bit, and trust me, we still have a lot more to go. And then as the weeks go on, you'll be doing more and more on your own, and we'll take it as it comes, okay? So don't think that every lecture I'm gonna be talking for 5 hours. That's not gonna be I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be talking for 4 hours and 10 minutes. That's not gonna be the case. Eventually, I'll be maybe lecturing for about 15, 20 minutes, and then after that, you go ahead and you jump onto your project, onto your assignments. Sounds good? Now, okay, so now I'm ready to put in some text, okay? And I like to put all my text on a layer called text. So again, I'm gonna go back to the layers, okay, the layer properties. I'm gonna create a new layer. And I'm gonna call this layer text. This is gonna be my text layer. Anything that I put, any text that I put on my drawing is all gonna be on this layer, so that for whatever reason, I wanna print my drawing without any text on it for whatever reason. And the only difference is that I'm gonna leave it cyan, I don't care. I'm gonna make sure it's a continuous line, but as far as the line weights go, I like my text to be, you know, a little bit heavier than my bubble. So I'm gonna put my text, my line weight at 13. And of course, I'm gonna set it as current because that's the current layer. Guys, I don't know if you noticed it so far, but I like to work layer by layer by layer, okay? So, and this way I work on the layer and I do what I need to do and then I move on, okay? So that's done. Now, this here, I'm gonna zoom out a bit, okay? So this here is the first bubble. And in this axis here is called axis A, okay? Now, I'm gonna show you with AutoCAD how you can precisely put that letter A here right in the center of the circle, okay? First of all, okay, let's go to, excuse me. Okay, since I'm putting only one letter in this box, in this circle, I'm gonna use a single line of text, okay? So you can either type in text in the command line, or I can put here single line of text. Now, look at the bottom in the box of the command line. Does everybody see text? Specify starting point of the text. Does everybody see that in their command line?
Yep.
Who doesn't see that? Okay. Now you'll notice that in the square brackets, you have justified and you have style. You can change the style of your printing, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay. the next class, or I can show it to you this class. You can justify your printing, okay? So right now, you're gonna type in the, now guys, if you notice, okay, you see the capital letters that's in the square brackets? If you wanna pick that option, you just have to type whatever's in capital letters. And here, that they've also done is they put in capital letters and they also give it a bit of a color blue. So if I wanna justify my text, I will type in the letter J in the command line, okay? And press enter. And this is what pops up. Does everybody get this menu on the screen? Left, center, right, align, middle, fit. Does everybody have that? Or do you want me to do it over again? Everybody's good? Guys, you can give me a thumbs up on your, I have the participants on, like, I need to
Can I do that again, please?
do it again. So guys, like, don't let me go on, because if you, I'd rather do it again, and this way, whoever got it, it's only gonna be repetition reinforces remembering. I want everybody to be at the same speed, okay? So I'm going to, okay, first of all, in the command line, you can type in the word text, okay? I like to use DT, dynamic text, in the command line, but if you don't, if you want to use the icons, here you have a single line of text. Is that so far so good? Who asked me to do it over again?
It was me.
Okay, so Christopher, in the command line, do you see text specify starting point of text? Do you have that?
Yeah.
You see the J or the style? Okay, we'll talk about style either today or next week, okay? I'll show you all the different styles that you can do with AutoCAD. But we will justify our text. So what they want you to do is in the command line, you type in the letter J and press enter. And of course, this is what pops up. Now, these are the different positions that you can justify the text. By default, this is left. That means when you pick a point here, AutoCAD will start there and put the text going left. Center means that AutoCAD will take that point. Once you press enter, it will put it right in between the center of where you started. Right means that you can pick this point, and after you finish typing, AutoCAD will make it to the right of that point. And that becomes very important when you're at the edge of your border and you want to make sure you don't go over your border. Align means that if you happen to have something at an angle, you can have the text align with the angle that you want it to be. Middle means it's very similar to center, but instead of taking the center bottom of the text, it will take the middle of the text and justify it. And then fit, sometimes you're trying to squeeze in some text and there's not enough space, so you can tell AutoCAD, take all this text and fit it in, and it's gonna compress everything, but you gotta be careful because sometimes it becomes illegible. So this is, the first options here are for single line of text, and then when we get into multiple text, I will talk about these options here. This is for multiple text, okay? So right now, what you wanna do is you wanna put the text right in the middle of what you pick on your screen. So you're gonna pick middle. Okay, and then it says specify middle point. Well, I'm gonna go get the center of the circle. Okay, now, what's the height of the text, guys? This is where, believe it or not, even though even though I'm drawing with AutoCAD, believe it or not, I still use one of these. Okay, because this gives me the information that I need to do. Okay, right now I'm drawing at 1 to 50, okay, 1 to 50. So I look at my 1 to 50 scale and I decide how high should I make the text, right? And in this case here, at a 1 to 50 scale, it should be about that height. That would be a little too high. Okay, so this helps you decide what you're gonna be putting, because you can't put it at 0, it's gonna be way too small. Okay, so for example, you have to specify a height. So here I'm going to specify, for example, 200 millimeters. What's the angle that I want it to be at? Okay, 0 degrees is what I want it to be at. And of course, now I put in what I want. And everything has to be capitalized, so I turn my caps on. And I click outside the box, and there you go. You like the way the A is perfectly centered in your circle? Press escape, get out of the command. Is that nice?
Can you do that again? It was kind of fast.
Yeah, okay, I'll do it again, guys. Guys, don't forget, I've been doing this for 30 years. So I'm sorry, like sometimes I go a little fast because I don't really, and as a matter of fact, I feel as if I'm slowing down because I do this much faster. Okay, so let me do that again. Let me undo. Hold on a second. I'm having trouble. Okay. Okay, so first of all, I want to put in some text. First of all, I want to make sure I'm on my text layer. Perfect. So I want to put in some text. Like I said, I don't even, when it comes to text, I like to type in my command line here. I like to type DT, dynamic text, okay? It's the same thing as text, okay? The only thing is that dynamically it shows up on the screen. After that, I want to justify my text, the J. And therefore, as far as justifying it, these are all the points I can use to justify my text: left, center, right, middle. I want to make sure that the middle of my text is exactly where it is, what I pick on the screen. So I'm going to pick middle. Where's in the middle point? Well, I'm going to go look for the center of the circle. There's the middle point that I want to put my text. What's the height of my text? Well, I'm going to make it 200. What's the angle of my text? Well, I want to keep it at 0. So I'm going to, whatever is in the brackets, that's the value by default. If you don't like it, you can change it. If you like it, you just press enter. And now, of course, I type in the letter A, click outside the box, press escape, and there you go. Is that okay with everybody? But if you do not have your O snaps on, you won't be able to find the center of that circle. So make sure your O snaps are all turned on, and then you can go find the center. Does everybody have that?
Yep.
Is that good? Now, of course, guys, with AutoCAD, the nice thing about AutoCAD is that I should be able to look at what I can copy over and over again. So therefore, I can only have to draw it once and copy it over and over and over again, okay? So in this case here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole bubble and I'm going to copy it and I'm going to put it here, I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to put it there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, up here, and take the copy command. The copy command is right below the move command in the editing. Guys, if you notice that here, these are all your drawing commands and these are all your modifying commands. Okay, and this is all your annotations. And of course, this is your layers and so on. I mean, so this is the copy command. Okay, so I'm going to pick that. Okay, and I look at the command line. It says select objects. You'll notice that in this case here, I like to use a window. I select with a window. Why? Because I know that by selecting a window, I can, if I were to select crossing, I'd have to be very careful. If I select crossing, in other words, if I would select by crossing, I'd have to be, I can also select it by crossing, but I'd have to do it this way, make sure I don't intersect that line. So I'm very flexible on what I use as a window. And instead of picking both with my pick box, I picked it with the window. Now, I'm going to press enter, okay? Now, if you look at the command line, it says specify base point. In other words, tell me where you want AutoCAD to start making its calculations. Guys, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it very simple. See here? I'm going to just pick nearest. I'm going to pick this line here, nearest. Okay? So I'm going to click here. It's going to start right on that entity, okay? And then I'm going to go perpendicular to that line. I'm going to go perpendicular to that line, perpendicular to that line. And I'm going to press escape and I'm done. You want me to do that over again?
Please.
Okay, so let me undo, okay? So like I said, I'm going to copy. So first of all, you all know where the copy command is, right? Right below the move command here, there's a copy command under the modified part of the ribbon, copy. So I'm going to copy, what are the entities I want to copy? I want to copy those two entities. Press enter. pick a base point. So guys, I don't go, I could have gone to pick that quadrant and gone to that endpoint, that endpoint, that endpoint. I don't even bother. I pick the nearest entity that I know, then I go perpendicular to that, perpendicular to that. You see the perpendicular sign? That means I'm perpendicular to that, perpendicular to that, press the escape button, and I'm done. Is that fast? Now, of course, okay. Now, of course, here I have B, C, and D, and not AAA. So once I've copied that, okay, I double click on the letter, and I change that to a B. I double click on the letter, I change that to a C, and I double click on the letter, and I change that to a D. Now I got the right axes and the right letters. You want me to do that over again? Yeah, you should. I know there's an autosave. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bubble with this letter and I'm going to put it here. So I'm going to use the same thing. I'm going to use the copy command now. Okay. The only difference is that I'm going to pick the entity. I'm going to press enter to say that those are the objects I want to copy. The difference is that since I want this bubble to be here, I'm going to go pick that quadrant point there. And I'm going to go put it to that endpoint there. And now that's done. Okay. Now that I've got that in the right position at the endpoints, I do the same thing. I'm going to say copy, pick both entities. I come here, I pick this nearest line. I go perpendicular, 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 and everything is done. Then once I've done that, well, then I go and edit the text inside the bubble. Double click on the letter, put the number 1. Is that what we have? Yeah, it's 1. Okay. Double click on the letter, put the number 2. Double click on the letter, put the number 3. Of course, click outside the box to make sure you can go to the next command. Double click on the letter and put the number 4. And there you have it. So now you've got all your axes numbered properly. So if all of a sudden you happen to be zooming in and you want to make sure you're doing something between axes 3 and 4, you know you're in the right part of the drawing. Guys, if you want me to do it over again, just say so. Would you like me to do it over again? Or is everybody
Yes,
okay?
please.
Okay, which one do you want me to do over again?
The first step to move it from the top to, well, from horizontally to vertically.
From horizontally to vertically, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this. Okay. You notice that I picked a window to pick my entities, okay? And this way, whatever was outside my window will not get erased, okay? Okay, so basically, okay, I want to take this bubble with this letter and I want to put it right here at this endpoint here. So I use the copy command, okay? I first pick what I want to copy. So in other words, I pick a window and I make sure that whatever is in the window is going to get picked by AutoCAD. I press enter. Okay. Now it asks, look at, always read, guys, always read the command line to know what AutoCAD is asking you next in terms of information. That's very, very important. Okay. So here AutoCAD says specify base point. In other words, where do you want me to start doing my calculations? Well, in this case here, I want you to take this quadrant here. I want you to use this to do your calculation right there. And then I want you to go and put it right there at that endpoint. And I press escape to get out of the command. Is that okay with everybody? Guys, I can do it over again. Don't worry. I got patience for this. I'd rather you guys learn and learn it properly, okay? And I can tell you that the way I'm going to teach you to draw with AutoCAD is that I want you to be able to draw as quickly as possible so that you can get as much done within the least amount of time. Because in an office, if you happen to be doing an AutoCAD, the faster you can finish a drawing, the more they'll pay you to do it. You see? Okay. Any, excuse me. So now that I've got that there, right? I want to put this here, here, and here. So therefore I use the copy command again, okay? And you notice like my window only has those two entities that are gonna get picked. Press enter, and I can go here. I can even go here, intersection, I can go to quadrant. I just like to keep it as, make it as simple as possible. I pick my nearest, I go perpendicular, 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 and all those bubbles are exactly where I want. Now, I double click on the letter, change that to a 1, click outside the box, double click on the letter, change that to a 2, click outside the box, number 3, outside the box, and number 4. Enter, and that's it. So there you go. Now guys, it's 2:39. We'll break now. We'll come back at 3. Guys, take a 20-minute break, okay? We'll come back at 3. And of course, after that, what we'll do is we'll start, fixing up our drawing a bit. I'll show you how to do that. And we will then start putting some of the objects into our drawing. Okay, so have yourself a nice break. Be back by 3 o'clock. I'm very precise, guys. At 3 o'clock, I will start right away. So come back by 3, come back a little bit earlier, and we will continue from here. Okay, so enjoy your break. Go get some air, whatever, and see you at 3 o'clock. Sounds good?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, so see you guys at 3. Okay. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pause the recording right now. I picked the wrong screen. And of course, okay. Now guys, before I go on, okay, I'm just going to clean up my drawing a bit. Like I said, with AutoCAD, right? With AutoCAD, it's nice to have things placed properly, like and all that and so on and so on. So what I'm going to show you is, for example, if I want to have these things equidistant, well, like if you're drawing manually, you would kind of give yourself, for example, if I want to make sure that this is a certain distance away from here and a certain distance away from there, right? Well, okay. Then you would want to make sure that you give yourself some kind of construction line so that you can place this. Well, with AutoCAD, you can draw whatever you want to help you place whatever you need to place. And then after that, you simply undo them. Now, right now, what I like is, for example, I'm going to show you something that's very nice with AutoCAD. And sorry, I'm going to have to go and okay. What am I? Okay, just wanted to make sure I was able to see my little, okay. Now, it's nice to have these bubbles equidistant from, let's say, the two axes here, okay? So now I noticed that, for example, you're gonna have to give yourself enough room to come in here and put some dimensions, and you might want to be able to put some text in here and all that. So let's say that we want to keep these bubbles, but let's say 2,500 millimeters away from this line and 2,500 millimeters away from that line, okay? So what I can do with AutoCAD is I can use the offset command, okay? And I say 2,500. And I would want, that's where I would like these bubbles to end up, okay? And 2,500 away from here, okay? Now, with AutoCAD, there's a very strong command with AutoCAD that's called the stretch command. You can actually stretch things with AutoCAD. And this is where you have the stretch command, right below the copy command, okay? Now, with AutoCAD, when you use the stretch command, it's very important. Okay, so if I click here, now, if I look, I'm in the stretch, it says select objects. Now, the stretch command, you can only select objects by crossing. So if I have to do a crossing, not a window, but a crossing. So that means I have to go from right to left. So I pick a point here, and I go there and I pick the things that I want to stretch. So I want to stretch these things here. Okay, press enter. Then it says pick the base point. So what I want to do is I want to go and pick this quadrant here and go down to that perpendicular to that line there. And all of a sudden everything gets stretched exactly to 2,500 millimeters away from that line. The stretch command, guys, is a very powerful command depending on how many things you have. But do you want me to do that over again? Or maybe I'll do it with the horizontal axis. So in other words, I want to stretch these so that they're here, okay? And of course, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say stretch. These are the elements I want to stretch. So you notice I pick my elements, but with a crossing. Okay. I am going to be removing I'm sorry. Should have done this stretch. Now, for example, if I would know, okay, if I would know the distance between here and here, and of course, to know that distance, I come here to distance, say, give me a distance from this quadrant to that perpendicular to there. So that's exactly 548 millimeters. So if I want, I can take the stretch command, okay? I pick the entities that I want to stretch. I'll pick any point on the screen, okay? Show the direction and put 548, and there you go. And that's going to be, so right now, if I didn't screw up, if I measure the distance from here to here, I should have 2,500. So I'm off by 2 millimeters, but that won't make much of a difference at this scale. So now I've placed where my two axes want to be. So I'm going to erase the two construction lines that I used to help me place it. And since what I like to do, if I want to place it equidistant from here, guys, with AutoCAD, I draw myself construction lines. So I take the line command, I start here. I'll go over by 3,000 in this direction. Put a comma. Go down by 3,000, put a minus 3,000. And right now, I'm going to use the move command move. I'm going to pick all of these things here. Of course, these things here. And I'm going to go from that intersection to that endpoint. And of course, once I've done that, I'm going to erase my construction line. And now you see that my drawing is nicely placed on, with respect to where I wanted it to be, and I can continue drawing. So as soon as I've done my grids and as soon as I put in my bubbles and all that, I like to start placing my drawing where I want it to be in its final position when I'm ready to plot. Now, normally what you do, okay, is in a drawing, you always try to keep the upper left-hand corner here as your drawing area. You can keep this part here for all your notes and all your schedules. You should have room for a title block down here and so on. So this is a nice layout for a plan view. Your plan up in the upper right-hand corner here. Leave here room that if you want to put a schedule or some notes, put your title block down in here, and then leave some room down here in case you want to put the title of your drawing, whatever. Okay, so guys, now if this is not done, don't worry about it. I'm just trying to make you understand is that don't be afraid to draw more than you need to. In other words, give yourself construction lines to actually, help you place things with AutoCAD. Because if you do it, AutoCAD will place it very accurately. Now, I've got my grids, I've got my bubbles, in other words, I got my axes. First thing I want to do is start putting in my entities. So first thing I want to do is I want to put in those columns, okay? So now what I'm going to do is columns are going to be on a separate layer. So I'm going to go to my layers property here, and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this layer, I'm going to put all my columns on a column layer. And the reason why I do that, okay, now I'm going to leave it on. I'm going to make that the color white. The line is going to be continuous, but I want the columns to be a little bit heavier than the other lines that represent the beams. Oops, okay. And therefore, I'm going to change the line weight to about 0.25 here for the columns, and everything else, or I can use 0.2 here, and then I can make all my objects 0.18. It's your choice. I like to make this 0.25. I like the columns to be a little bit heavier so that when you look at the drawing, they stand out. And then all the other lines that represents the beams and so on, I make them a little bit lighter. So I'm going to use 0.25 here for the line weight, make that okay. And of course, I'm going to set it as current. Like I said, if you forget to set as current, you can easily fly it out. Okay. Now, when it comes to the columns, okay, I know the column is going to be sitting here. Okay. So basically, guys, in structural steel, columns are put in graphically. They're not put in to the exact size. So what I like you to do is I like you to take the line command here, okay, and simply draw a line, okay, anywhere. I'm just going to show you what I like to do. I draw a line, and I'm going to make this column 200 millimeters long, high, okay, and then I'm going to go out about 100 millimeters. Believe it or not, that's going to become my column, okay? Because now what I'm going to do is I am going to mirror this line here. I'm going to take that point there and go there. I'm going to mirror that. And then I'm going to take these two things. Sorry. I'm going to take the mirror command. I'm sorry, mirror. I'm going to take the mirror command, take these two lines here, find my midpoint, and I'm going to mirror that. Now, does that look like a column? Oops, sorry, I should have put yes. Okay, so mirror. I want to mirror that line and that line. Take that endpoint, press enter. Does that look like a column, guys? And guys, it looks big because we're zoomed in, but believe it or not, it's about the right size that it should be for this size of drawing, okay? So now that I've actually drawn one, okay, what I like to do is I want all those separate lines to act as one entity. Guys, you want me to repeat that?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
please. Can you?
Okay. So like I said, I'll repeat it here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these columns about 200 millimeters by 200 millimeters. And like I said, guys, this is what gives me an idea of how big to make my columns. And I look at my scale to give me an appreciation of how big these things should be on my drawing. So I start by drawing one line, okay? Like I'll draw one line. You know, I could have easily, you know, draw one line, go down. I want to make it 200, so I give it a direction, and I pick 200. Press enter. So this line is exactly 200 millimeters long. Then I give it a direction. I know that I'm going to make it 200 in the other direction, but I only take half of that value. So I'm going to take 100. Press enter and press escape. Now I've got the height and I got half the width. So what I'm going to do is that instead of trying to draw another line here 100 and then draw a line here, I like to use the mirror command. Because as soon as I see symmetry, the mirror command is a very fast way to draw something. So I use here the mirror command. That's mirror, right next to copy. Mirror, okay? So I want to mirror this little line here, okay? So I select my objects, press my enter button. Then it tells me, select the point of the mirror. So I want to mirror with respect to this line here. So I'm going to take that point, just drag down, pick that point. Then it tells me, do I want to erase the object that I want to mirror? And if you look in the command line, it says yes or no. No, I want to keep it, so I'm going to leave the default value no. Press enter, and it's done. Now, I can now want to mirror this up here. So I'm going to take the mirror command again. This time I'm going to use a window to pick them, right? Press enter. Now I know I'm going to be mirroring with respect to the midpoint of this line here. So I drag my cursor down, or my pick box, until I see that little triangle. That little triangle represents midpoint. That's where I want it to start the mirroring from. Pick that point, just drag it over, and just show that you want a reference line that the computer needs to do its calculation. Pick that point, and guess what? No, and it's done. Guys, there's one thing I want you to let you know about AutoCAD. AutoCAD is very similar to playing a musical instrument. The more you play with it, the better you get. Okay, so don't feel like you're fumbling around. It's understandable that you guys like what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you enough assignments that you can be able to practice and you can be able to improve your AutoCAD skills. So don't worry about it right now. And what I like, and I appreciate when you tell me, yes, do it over again. So I know that I was either going a little too fast, and at the same time, I don't want to bore the people that know how to do this already. So I'm trying to find that pace that I can, you know, so if I don't mind, by all means, I appreciate when you ask me to do it over again, I will do it over again. Now, like I said, what I like to do is I like to take this little drawing, like all these little different lines, like this is one line, that's one line, that's one line, that's one line, that's one line. I want to take all these lines and kind of fuse them together into making one entity. In other words, I don't want to have to, you know, move one line and so on. So I'm going to take my little column here and turn it into what they call a block. A block is like a drawing that is within a drawing. So does everybody have this drawn on their drawing? Is this okay? Because if you don't have this drawing, you won't be able to do the block command. Is this okay with everybody? And guys, if it's not precise, don't worry about it. We'll just keep going. Now, if you come to the second tab on the ribbon here you're at the Home tab, and here you have your Insert tab. Okay. Now, if you hit, so there's my Home tab, I'm hitting the Insert tab. Is everybody there? Okay. Now, if you look right below the Insert tab, you have Create a Block. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a block. And once you hit that, this is the menu that pops up. Now, you have to give the block a name. In other words, because you can have a series of these blocks in your drawings, okay? And of course, these become like little subset drawings that you can call up anytime during your drawings and help you do the drawing. So let me call this one columns, C-O-L-U-M-N-S, columns, okay? Now, base point. In other words, when I'm going to either move this thing, copy it, or insert it, I want to be able to pick at what point AutoCAD is going to use as a base point. So I'm going to pick a point on the screen. So this picks a point. So right now, I don't care. I'm going to use this one here. So right now, I'm going to pick that. I want that to be the point that AutoCAD always uses to either select it, move it, and all that. That's called the insertion point. Okay, this is what I'm going to use as my point that, then it says select objects. So I'm going to go and select objects. And I'm going to select those objects. And I'm going to press enter. And if I'm happy with it, if everything's done, there's a little picture of it, I press OK. And now that's turned into a block. Now, just to give you an appreciation that if I pick this little point here, this is no longer a little line segment. All these line segments have been glued together or fused together into one entity. So now it's much easier to manipulate, okay? So for example, if I want to move this block to this point here, I say, go back to the Home tab. I'm going to say move, excuse me, move. So here I'm going to pick, move this object here. And of course, I'm going to go take that insertion point that I told AutoCAD to use and to move it to that intersection. Bang, and it's right where it's supposed to be. So this here is still, each line is a different, each line segment is a separate entity because I haven't turned it into a block, but this one now has become one entity. And the advantage of doing that is that, first of all, every time you zoom in and out, it takes less computer time for it to do it. And at the same time, it's much easier to manipulate, okay, as an entity. So those are the blocks. And guys, what I do is I always create myself a lot of template drawings. And in this template drawings, I put a lot of blocks that I've created. So this way I can call them up at any time and I don't have to redraw this. So for example, if I had a template, I would have already had this block inserted in my template and I wouldn't have to redraw it. I would simply have to call it up and use it in my drawing. Now let me erase this line here. Erase these here. Now you'll notice, okay, you'll notice that I have columns here, 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 and so on and so on, okay? Now, if I can do a number of things, okay? I can simply use the copy command, okay? I say copy. So I pick this column here, right? And I go to nearest and I go perpendicular, I go perpendicular, and I go perpendicular. And of course that, oops, I screwed up on that one. Okay, I can use the copy command. And of course, or when things are regularly spaced in AutoCAD in either an X or the Y direction, one of the commands that you can use to repeat copying something is called the array. And this is where you find the array command. Okay? So this is the array command. And of course, I'm spacing things in a rectangular pattern, so therefore I will take rectangular array. Okay? Now it tells me to select objects. So this is what I want to array. Press enter. Now this is the menu that pops up. So now here I have to give it some information. Like how many columns do I have? I have 4 columns, okay? In other words, if I look here, I have 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns, 4 columns. So 4 columns. What's the spacing between the columns? Well, according to my drawing, that spacing is, if I'm not mistaken, I don't see it right now. Oh, 6,500, okay. So that spacing right now is at 6,500. Okay. How many rows do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4 rows. So I have 4 rows. Now the difference is that the spacing is not 4,600 because it would send it up. The spacing between the rows becomes minus 4,600. Okay? And if I'm happy with the information, okay, I press enter. And if I close it, you'll notice that I have a column at every axis. You want me to do that over again, guys? Hello? Is anybody there?
Yes.
You want me to do it over? Okay, so I'm going to undo what I just did. Sorry. Undo. Okay, so basically, since I have a regular distance, an equal distance in the x direction, an equal distance in the y direction, I can use the array command to copy things, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say use the array command, which is right here. Array, okay? And I'm going to select what I want to copy or array. Okay, this is what I want to copy. So I tell the program I want to copy this particular entity, press enter, and that's the menu that pops up here, okay? Now, in my case, I have 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns, 4 columns. So I have 4 columns, so I don't have to change that value. The difference is that the distance between columns is not 300 millimeters. We have, what's it? 6,500 millimeters. The distance between the columns is 6,500 millimeters. So if I put a positive value, the array goes from left to right in the x direction. If I want to go in the other way, I put a negative value, it goes from right to left in the x direction. So that's going to be for in this direction. Now, as number of rows, I have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, 4 rows. So therefore, I'm going to change this to 4. Okay, now the distance between rows, I just have to remember that I don't want to go up. A positive value goes up the y-axis. I want to go down, therefore I have to give it a negative value. Minus, use a minus sign, 4,600. And, okay, now if I'm happy with how it's being placed here, you see, I just press close array and it's done. Now, the thing about an array is that when it inserts it, it also inserts everything as a block. So you'll notice that if I pick 1 column, they all get picked. So now if I want to get rid of these 2 columns here, because I don't have these 2 columns on my drawing, this is too much. What I need to do is I need to explode the block. So therefore, this is the explode command. Right below the erase command is the explode command. It says select objects. And once I pick that column and I press enter, now all of a sudden each one of these is a separate entity. So now I can edit them individually. And of course, I don't need these 2 columns here. So therefore, I'm going to take the erase command. And I'm going to just erase those 2 columns, which I don't need. And they're gone. So far, so good. Now, guys, I know that, I'm just trying to show you all the different choices you have with AutoCAD. If you wanted to, okay, if, you could have copied 1, copy, 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 then pick these 4, copy, copy, copy. You could use the copy command, or you could use the array command. You end up with the same thing. But if things are equally spaced in one axis, and especially if they're equally spaced in both axes, it's much faster to use the array command to copy things than just use the copy command, okay? So that's, yes.
Could you explain how to make the column into a separate object?
Like make the column into a block?
No. Into a single entity.
Okay, like right now, when I did this array command, all these had become 1 block, okay? So what you have to do is you have to explode that entity into separate entities. So basically, what you do is that right above the offset command and right below the erase command here, you have this thing called explode. Okay, in my days, when I first took AutoCAD, believe it or not, the icon they had was a little dynamite stick. I thought that was cute, okay? Now they came up with this icon, but I preferred the little dynamite stick. So you pick the explode command, and then of course, I don't want to do it here because I'm going to be exploding my block. And then you pick one of the columns and it's going to explode all the columns to separate entities. Okay, because now if I do it here, okay, what's going to happen is that this column is no longer a block. This column has now gone down to what we had originally made the separate entities. So any block that I have, if I want to break it back down into the separate entities that it's made of, I simply use the explode command. I'm going to undo that because I didn't want to, I want to keep that as a block. Okay, is that okay? Who asked me the question?
Yes.
Jimmy, you asked the question?
Yep, I understood.
Did it work on your drawing?
Yep.
Okay, great. Now, we've got our columns in, okay? Now, I'm not going to worry about the other columns right now at the opening here. I think I have an opening in here. I'll put those in afterwards, okay? But if I want to, okay, hold on a second. I might as well, okay, I'll put those in afterwards, but right now I'm going to worry about, now, I'm ready to put in all my beams, in other words, all the lines that represent the beams in my drawings, okay? So I like to keep that on a separate layer because it's gonna have a slightly different line thickness. So I'm gonna go back to the layers property here, and I'm gonna create another layer called, okay, create another layer. And this one I'm gonna call objects. In other words, okay, so anything that's an object in my drawing, in other words, all my, okay. Now, of course, I'm going to keep it as being, I'm going to keep them white. That's okay. And I'm going to keep it as a continuous line. The only difference is that this one's going to be just slightly lighter than my columns, and therefore I'm going to change the line weight to 0.25. So that when I print my drawing, the columns are going to stand out, then the objects are going to be the second thing I'm going to see, then I'm going to see my text and my bubbles, and then in the background, I'm going to see my grid lines. Okay, so that's how you create definition with drawings. That before, when you would do it manually, you'd be able to press harder or lighter on your pencil. Well, you can't do that with a computer. So the only thing you have to be able to create depth is you play with the line weights, and therefore, at the end of the day, your drawing will be easier to read because of the different, how the objects pop up and set back into the drawing. So this is okay. Now, of course, I forgot, now I'm gonna close this, okay? Now I forgot to make a current, not a problem. All I gotta do is fly this out, hit it, and now that becomes the, okay? Now, I don't know, so now these things, like in structural steel, beams are represented by lines, okay? So let me zoom in here, okay? Let me zoom in here, and I'm gonna show you, okay? So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by drawing one line. So I take the line command, and I'm going to draw a line from that insertion point, and I'm going to go to this insertion point. Okay, so now you'll notice that if you look at the sketch, okay, the line for the beam does not touch the columns. And in structural steel, that's very important. That tells the person that's going to be fabricating or building this structure that what type of connection has to be done between the beam and the column. So therefore, we have to make the line just slightly smaller and not touch the column anymore. So if you highlight the line, you see you've got these drag points. This is one drag point, this is another drag point, this is another drag point. So what you do is you simply take the drag point, show what direction you want to drag it back, make them all the same. So let's say we want to drag it back about 75 millimeters. And now that line is no longer touching the beam. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Show what direction you want to drag it to, put 75. And now the line is no longer touching the beam, and that's exactly how you want that line to be represented on your drawing. You don't want it to touch the whatchamacallit, the column itself, okay? Now, excuse me. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the line in here. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to draw a line from there to there, perpendicular to there. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take it and I'm going to drag it back by 75. And I'm going to drag it back here by 75. And that's going to be that line there. Now, I know that what I can do, okay, what I can do is that I know that the spacing of those beams inside this bay here, let me just make sure. I know that there's 1, 2, 3 of them, okay? So in other words, I'm gonna have 4 equal spaces within this bay, and I can, do the math in my head, take 6,500, divide it by 4, and know what's the distance between each one of the beams in between, okay? But if I don't want to do the math in my head, I can let AutoCAD do the calculation for me, okay? So, excuse me. The way I can do that is very simple. I start by drawing a line. And these are construction line, guys. I find the midpoint of this line here, okay? And I will draw it perpendicular to that line there. So that's a construction line, okay? Now, what I can do is I can tell AutoCAD, I'd like you to divide this line into a certain number of segments. So at the command line, I type in the command divide, D-I-V-I-D-E, divide, okay? Press enter. And if you read what the command says, select objects to divide. So I want to select this object here. Fair enough. And then it says, enter the number of segments. I said I need 4 segments, so I would put in the number 4. You don't see anything, but if I erase this line, you see these nodes here? That's exactly spaced at 1,625 millimeters. And to make sure, I can go here and take distance, to take a distance from there to there, and it's exactly 1,625 millimeters. So guys, you can let AutoCAD do the calculations for you. You don't have to call up, there's a calculator in the program, but you can let AutoCAD do the calculations for you, okay? So now that I know where to set these lines, right? I can draw a line from that node perpendicular to that line. And of course, I want to shorten that line by 75 millimeters. And now, all of a sudden, I have exactly the line segment that I want, okay? And now what I need to do is, of course, I need to mirror this line so I can have it on this side. So I'm using the mirror command. I select my object and I mirror it. Oops, sorry, I should have said, I pressed the escape button. So I'm going to press mirror. That's the line I want to mirror. Do I want to erase? Okay. Oops, second line. No. So now I've got my line. Okay. Now this is 2 segments. I got 1 segment there. Sorry. I have a segment there and a segment there. Now I don't want to have 2 segments for this line. I want to have only 1 segment. So one of the nice things about AutoCAD is I can join these 2 segments into 1 segment. And underneath here, if you fly out the modify, you have this one command here called join. Okay. And the join command, it says, I select this, I select that, press enter. Now this is no longer 2 lines, this becomes only 1 line. Okay. Now, remember the offset command? I'll do this over again, guys. I just want to show you the offset command. Now, I'm going to use the offset command. And it says, in this case, I'm not going to specify a distance. I'm going to go through something, okay? So instead of specifying a distance here, I'm going to put in the letter T, through, okay? Now it says select object. I select this object here. And then it says through what? I'm going to go through that node there. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to go through that node there. So you can actually go through an OSNAP, in other words, some kind of entity, and you'll get exactly the same values. And now to make sure everything is okay, if I do a quick dimension, that's exactly 1625, that's exactly 1460, and that's, I know that I can't get any more precise than that.
Can you repeat, please, the true command?
I'm going to do everything again, guys. I want you guys to learn this, okay? I'm just trying to make you understand the number of options you have with AutoCAD. Guys, the way you master AutoCAD is very simple. It's finding the least amount of steps to go through in order to achieve a certain result. That's how you master AutoCAD. I mean, I could have done a number of things and I would have had the same results, but I believe the way I did it now, I'm just trying to show you one of the faster ways that you can do this, okay? I could have easily offsetted this line here, okay, at the 1625, but then I would have to do the calculation that is at 1625 and all that, okay? But when I'm going to do it, I'll do the whole thing over again so that you, and then I'll take my time and, okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm simply gonna erase. I'm gonna erase what I have now. I'm going to even erase those nodes. I'm going to erase everything, okay? So everything's gone, okay? So like I said, I'm going to start over from scratch. Excuse me, let me just drink a sip of water. Okay, so I know if I look at my drawing, I have 4 equal spaces within a bay. A bay, guys, is the area that is designated between 4 columns. This is called a bay. So right now, what I'm going to do is I use AutoCAD to do the math. Okay, so I take a construction line, I find my midpoint. So you notice, like, I like to drag along my entity. Oh, I see that's the midpoint. Okay, I take that midpoint and I draw it perpendicular to this line here. Perfect, nice. Now that I got this construction line, I'm going to use the divide command. So in the command line at the bottom, I'm going to write D-I-V-I-D-E, divide, okay? And then it says select object. This is what I want to divide. And I look at the command line and it's asking me, well, how many segments? So therefore I'm going to write in 4 segments. And of course, it doesn't look like nothing is done, but if I take the erase command and I erase my line, what you're going to see are the points that are equally spaced at exactly the distance that I want, okay? So that's going to be where I can start drawing my line. So now I draw a line, and I start at that node, okay? And I go perpendicular to that line. Once I draw it, of course, I don't want it to touch that line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink it like I did the other ones by 75, okay? Now that I have this, I want this to be exactly the same thing on this side, so I will use the mirror command. I take this point here and just drag to the right, and that's what I like about keeping this at 90 degrees. It makes it very easy for me to just, okay, and no. Now, because these are 2 line segments, I want to join them as 1 line segment, so I'm going to use the joint command underneath the modified. If I fly this out, I'm going to show you how to use all these commands, guys, so don't worry about it. So the joint command is this one here, or you can just type in joint in the box. If you remember the command and you like typing, then you don't have to go to icons. I know where my icons are, so I say in joint, I pick this one, I pick that one, press enter, And now all of a sudden, AutoCAD has joined this into one entity instead of two. So it's much easier for me to manipulate it and use it in my drawing. Now, you wanted me to repeat the through command, okay? Now, I mean, I can, I can go with AutoCAD and measure a distance. In other words, I can go from that midpoint. Oh, okay, it's 1625. But if I don't want to even do that, what I'll do is I'll use the offset command. Sorry. And here, instead of specifying a distance, I will type the letter T. So you see here in the brackets, this is what AutoCAD is going to use to do the offset command. So right now, the through is already there. If it's not there and you have a dimension, just type in the letter T and AutoCAD will take through. Okay, so that's how you do that. So always, guys, always look at the command line to see what is AutoCAD asking you in terms of information so they can execute the command properly. That's very important. Always look down at the command line and say, okay, what's it asking me now? Oh, okay, so through. So now I press enter. It's almost as if I gave it a distance. So now it says select object. So this is the object I want to offset, okay? And now I'm going to pick the entity I want to go through. If I wanted to go through this line, I could have gone right here and I've gone right through there, okay? Now in this case, I want to go right through that node, and there you go, okay? Now I pick, now it only offsets one entity at a time. So then I pick this one here, and I go through that node. I didn't have to pick that in. I can go back and pick this entity here, same thing, okay? Sorry, offset, okay? So I could, and then still go through there. I had the same results, guys. So I can, use the same one, whatever. And now these lines, like I said, if you do a quick measure, they are exactly where they're supposed to be. 1625, 1625, 1625, 1625. They're all equally spaced and so on. Now, of course, what's nice about this situation here is that these things are exactly the same distances. I can use the array command and place all the beams with the array command if I want. Or if you don't want to go through the trouble of using the array command, you can use the copy command. I'm going to use the copy command this time. I want to copy this, 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 and I want to copy this. Okay? So that's what I want to copy. I press enter. Then I'm going to go here. I'm going to go perpendicular to there. I'm going to go perpendicular to there. And now I've copied. Now, of course, I want to copy this one here to here. So I'm going to say, sorry, I want to copy this one from here to here. So I'm going to say copy. This, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go perpendicular to there. And that's already done. Okay? So now all those entities are copied. Now what I want to do is I want to take all these entities here, okay, and I want to copy them down here. So what I'm going to do is use the copy command again. Like, guys, the copy command is like the array command. It's up to you what you want to do. The copy command will give you the same results as the array command. I'm going to take all of these. I'm going to copy this, take this one, all of these, this one, all of these, oops, and this one, this one, this one, and this one. And now I'm going to go from here, perpendicular to here, perpendicular to here. And of course, these are too many, so I'm just going to erase them. Erase, okay. And let's see, yeah, that's it. So, and erase. So guys, the copy command will give you the same result as the array command. In this case, it's up to you. And of course, I need to add one more beam in here. So I'm simply going to take the copy command, take that from there, perpendicular to that line, and there you go. Easy enough, guys? Easy for me, right? So guys, now, if you look at your sketch, you notice that in this bay here, you have an opening. Okay, you have an opening, and therefore you're gonna, and that opening is 2,000 600 millimeters from this line here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the offset command, offset. Now I'm going to specify a distance 2,600, okay? 2,600, okay? And that's from there to there, okay? Yeah, that's 2,600, okay? So that's where that is, and then you have an opening in here. So here you don't have any, okay? You don't have any, whatchamacallit, you don't have any, anything. There's an opening here. So what I can do, okay, first of all, okay, I have a column here and I have a column here, if I'm not mistaken. Am I doing this correct? Yeah, I got a column here and a column here. So what I can do is I can use the copy command again. I want a column. I want this column here. And I'm going to go from here, perpendicular. So I got, that's the column I want there, okay? And of course, now, so now this here is too much. So I'm going to use the trim command. So the trim command, okay, is basically, it says select objects. Okay, select objects. So these are the objects. Okay, sorry. The way the trim command works is that you use the trim command, you select what you want to use as your cutting edge. Okay, that's going to be your cutting edge. Okay, and then it says select objects to trim. So I'm going to select these three and they're gone. Okay. Now remember, we want to leave 75 millimeters between this line and this line. Okay, so I can do like before. Okay, I can simply do this, move it up 75. Okay. And of course, I can repeat it here again. Guys, there's a number of ways to do this. 75. And do this again. So now all those lines are there. So now what's left to be done is that you'll notice that this line goes right across the beam here, right across the beam there, okay? So what we need to do is we need to remove part of that. There's a number of things you can do. You can, give yourself construction lines. In other words, you can sort of like draw a line 75 millimeters away, or you can draw a line 75 millimeters away and all that. Or what you can do with AutoCAD, okay? What I like to do is simply, in the drawing command, what I can do, okay, in the modifying command, I'm sorry, in the modifying command, I can break something at a point. This is breaking something at a point, okay? So I can either break it at 2 points or at 1 point. So in this case, I'm going to break it at 2 points, okay? Now, be careful when you select something. If you want to break it at a very specific point, what you do is you type in the letter F. So you tell the program where is going to be the first point. So it says select the first point. So I'm going to pick, oh, my most nuts are off. So I'm going to pick that point there, and I'm going to pick that point there, okay? Press enter. Oops. Now, you might not see it, but, excuse me, but this here now has become one. Oh, sorry. I'm going to do that over again. Sorry. So modify, you can break things at 2 points. Select objects, first point. See, I did that wrong, okay? Let me undo that. Like I said, break. Okay, I'm going to select this. Sorry. I'm sorry, I'm sort of like, again. break, select object. So I'm going to press first point, select the first point, turn the illustrations on, select the second point, enter, and that should do it. And now, for some reason, it didn't work. Wow. I apologize, or let me do something else then. I'm going to break at a point. Take this. And now this should be broken into two separate lines. There you go. Okay, so I apologize for some reason. So now, of course, I can, like what I can do is I can take this and drag it up. And I can take this and drag it down. And now those lines no longer intersect. Now, instead of wasting my time to do it on this side, what I'm going to do is simply going to erase this. And I'm going to copy this line and this line. I'm going to go from there, perpendicular to there. And now I've got exactly the same thing on both sides. Okay, so now basically my structure, okay. And guys, what I do suggest whenever you're doing something with AutoCAD, have one of these around, okay? Have your hard copy of whatever you're drawing and make sure you highlight everything that you've done from your sketch onto your drawing, because once everything is highlighted, then you haven't forgotten anything. So now all my objects are in, okay? All my objects are in. Now I have two choices. Do I put in the text or do I put in the dimensions? It makes no difference. Like to me, I would rather put in all the text right now. And then after that, finish off by putting the dimensions. So let's go and put some text in. So basically, okay. Now what I like to do is, of course, now for the text, okay, what I'm going to do is, for example, I'm going to start here, okay? Now, I like to place things fairly accurately with AutoCAD. So therefore, first of all, since I'm doing some text, I'm going to go to my text layer, put everything on my text layer. So for whatever reason I want to remove it, I can actually do something. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to be using single line text. So therefore, single line text, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is, like we did before, I'm going to justify my text. Justify. And I'm going to center my text. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this midpoint to center my text. The height is going to stay the same. All text height has to be the same in the drawing except for the title. So that's going to stay 200. The angle is going to be 0. And I think that this here, according to my drawing here, is a W200 by 27. W200 by 27. So let's say caps W200 by 27. Oops, 27. Now you'll notice that the text is on the line. That's not very good. Okay, text should not be sitting on the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the text. I'm going to move this text and I'm going to take it and I'm just going to move it over by about 75, between 50 and 75 millimeters. And now it's no longer on the line, and that's exactly where I want it, okay? Now, what I tend to do is that if the text is repetitive, I take the one that is most repetitive, I do it once, and of course now, what I can do is I can take this text here. If I look at the sketch, I've got all of these beams here are W200 by 27, okay? So basically what I need to do is, now I can use the copy command. I take the text, I want to copy that. I take this point here, and I'll go there, and I'll go there. And Now that's all copied. Fair enough? Now, if you'll notice that the beam down here is the same as up here. So the best way for me to do that is simply use the mirror command. I take this midpoint here, I go across there, press enter, and there I have it. Now I got the text down there, okay? So guys, whenever you see symmetry, use the mirror command. Wherever you see repetition, use the copy command. And use, like you notice, like I take very specific points. I don't, like when I'm copying, like you notice I went here and I went perpendicular to there, went perpendicular to there. It's this way I can work from the overall view and I see exactly what I'm doing and so on. Now, here, the beam that I have here is different than the beam up here. This beam is supposed to be a W16 by 36. So what I like to do is I like to copy. I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to go from here, perpendicular to there. And now you'll notice that the line goes through the text. That's a no-no, because when you're going to be printing, it's going to look like hell. So guys, you should always make sure you can do two things. I can either move my text or simply shorten the line and make sure that the line doesn't go through the text. That's very important, okay? Now, of course, this is the wrong text. Sorry, that's a W12 by 27. I made a mistake. Why did I put 200? I apologize for that. This is a W12 by 27. And of course, now this is a W16 by 36. Guys. By 36. And now, of course, what I can do is to make sure I have these going across here. Since I don't want to have to shorten these lines with this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase them. And then when I use the copy command, I'm going to copy my text as well as my line. And I'm going to go from that point, perpendicular to that point, perpendicular to that point, and there you go. Okay, guys, I'm just showing you, like how quickly you can use AutoCAD to repeat things and how to precisely place something. And if I want to put this down here, I would erase this line here, and then I would copy that, and I would put it down here, and so on and so on, okay? Now, as far as the text in the vertical direction, well, you'll do exactly the same thing. You'll start by placing one of them. So let me start from here, okay? So for example, this is a W8 by 17 that they have, a W8 by 17. So I'm just gonna show you, for example, I'm gonna do, of course, single line text, okay? Now, again, see here it says center point. So it's already justified to center. So I'm gonna go and pick this midpoint here. Okay, the height is 200. I'm going to leave that the way it is. The only difference is that the angle is no longer 0. The angle is going to be 90 degrees. So I'm going to rotate the text and I'm going to put it 90. Okay, 90 degrees. Enter. Now, of course, you won't see this until you finish doing it. The nice thing about AutoCAD, and this is supposed to be a W8 by 17. And then once I'm finished, okay, and it rotated 90 degrees. And then of course the same thing, it's not good that the text touches the line, so I'm going to simply use the move command once. Like pick any point, pick here, you know that you want to move it about 75 millimeters away from that line. And there you go. And now you can start copying it all over the place, okay? And of course, modify the text where it is slightly different. Guys, I'm not going to go through the trouble of doing this whole drawing. We're here to learn. Oh, and by the way, guys, is there anything you want me to repeat before I go on?
Yeah, how high are you making the text?
200 millimeters.
Okay, thanks.
What do you have as your text height right now?
I just kind of like clicked, but I was gonna go back and change it.
Okay. Now, remember, if you want, like, for some reason, I didn't do this correctly, but, okay. Now, I just want to show you, okay, for example, in here, we have an opening. If you look at the diagram I sent you, like, we have an opening in here, okay? So you can indicate opening, okay? So in other words, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same layer as my text to make my opening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line, okay? From there to there. And then I'm going to draw a line from here to here. So those two lines are basically going to show where the opening is. Now, you'll notice that when you do this, the lines should not be touching these two. Okay, so now you can do the same thing we did before. For example, I can highlight it, I can drag it down, and so on. Okay, that's one way to do it. Or an easier way to do it is, believe it or not, is by using the scale command. Okay, so the scale command here, okay, I'm going to be using the scale command in other assignments, so I'll repeat this. The scale command is one way that you can use to manipulate these two lines, okay? Now it says, select objects. So I want to scale this one and this one, okay? I selected the two objects, and it says, select the base point. So I'm going to select this intersection here as my base point, right here, or the midpoint, the same thing, okay? Now, since I want to make them slightly shorter, I'm going to use a value of less than 1. So I can use 0.95, okay? So that's going to scale it down. Press enter, and look what happened. The lines are no longer touching the column, okay? I could have done the same thing with these here. In other words, I could have, for example, when I do this the first time, like here, I'll show you, I could have used that also, okay? Could have drawn a line from there to there, okay? And then to make sure they don't touch, I could have used the scale command, okay? And then I would have gone to midpoint here, okay? And I would have used 0.95. And guess what? I get the same result. Guys, AutoCAD offers you a number of ways to do something. It's up to you to figure out what would be the least amount of commands you need to do in order to achieve a certain result, okay? And let me erase this, okay? And guys, I can tell you right now, okay? I can spend 3 whole classes in going over all these commands, but until you actually start practicing yourself, it's never gonna sink in. So today I'm giving you a very broad overview, okay, of how to attack or how to, develop the drawing, okay? And now, last but not least, okay, so we talked about text. I'm not going to spend the time to do the text, because then what I'm going to do is I want to repeat any command that I did so that you guys can understand it fully, okay? Of course, I would put my text all over this drawing, okay? I would put my text all over this drawing, here, 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 everywhere, okay? Then once all my text has been done, I would move on to the next part, and I would start putting all my dimensions, okay? Now, sorry, let me just, I hate this. This thing doesn't look very good. Erase. I don't know what happened here, but I want to mirror this again. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, so guys, now, like I said, you would take this one, you would copy it there, and then copy it there, modify the text, and then copy it all the way across, and so on and so on, okay? Now, when it comes to dimensioning, I like to put all my dimensions on a dimension layer, because if ever I want to do presentation drawings without showing any dimensions, I can turn that layer off before I print it. First of all, let me erase, Okay. Now, of course, now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to finish this opening in here, okay? So basically, if I leave this like this, in structural steel, this represents like you're putting cross bracing here between these members, but it's not really cross bracing, it's an opening. So you have to tell the person, these are not structural members, it's just to indicate an opening. And what I like to do now is I like to use this command here, okay? And I like to create a box, okay? And once I create that box, I like to use a box to trim the lines inside. Now, I want to put open here so that people know that this is just an open or an opening. Therefore, now in this case here, I can do two things. I can use a single line of text, or I can use a multiple line of text. In other words, multiple lines, you're going to be doing things in paragraph form. So I'm going to use multiple line of text. Okay. Now it says specify first corner. So I'm going to go to this corner here. Okay. Before I pick the next corner, I'm going to tell the program to justify my text, just like I did for the single line of text. I'm going to justify my text, J. Now, these are what I have. I have top left, in other words, I can stop here, top left. Top center, I can start here, or top right. I can go to middle left, middle center, middle right, or I can go to bottom left, bottom center, bottom right. So I want to put it right in the middle, so I'm going to go to middle center. Middle center. And of course, show where the other point is. Now I'm going to make sure, and then here I'm going to put OPEN, click outside the box, and there you go. It's right in the middle of your box, and now that's done. Guys, I'm going to be repeating this also like in the following weeks, but this just to show you that when you're using multiple lines of text, it's done in paragraph form, and that's done within a rectangle that you define on your drawing, and everything is done within that rectangle. So now, so therefore, you basically have two general types of text. You have a single line, you have multiple lines of text, and when you're going to be putting something within an area, always use multiple lines of text to justify your text. So that's that. Now, let's go on and create one last layer for now. What we're going to call, of course, we're going to call this, make another one last layer, and we're going to call this layer dimension. Oops. And all my dimensions are going to be put on this layer. Now I'm going to make the color, make it green just for the sake of, so I know that I'm on the right layer. Okay. And as far as the line thickness for the dimensions, I'm going to keep it the same as my text because the annotation for the dimension is going to be the same. So that's just going to, of course, set it as the current one. Okay. Now, okay, close that. So now I'm into dimensioning, okay? Now guys, I just want to show you something, okay? When it comes to dimensioning, excuse me, okay, I'm going to, I want to show you something. Now I want to do a linear dimension. So this here is linear dimension. I want to dimension, let's say, I'm going to repeat this, but from here to here, okay? And you notice you don't see anything. In other words, you don't see any arrow sizes, you don't see any text. That's because your dimension style hasn't been adjusted for the scale that you're doing this thing at. Now I'm going to undo this. I'm going to undo this. Okay. Now, if you go to this third tab where it says annotate, the annotate tab, okay? Annotate tab. And if you go to where it says dimension, you have a little arrow that's pointing at downwards at an angle, okay? If you click on that, that brings up your dimension style, okay? So what you want to do is you want to go in there and you want to modify your dimension style so that it is appropriate for the drawing that you're doing, and therefore you're going to come in here and you're going to say modify. Now guys, this is all the dimension variables that you have in AutoCAD. In other words, you're going to have dimension lines, okay? It tells you what color the dimension lines are going to be, the weights and all that. And so here, okay, so let me, if ever you want to, for example, these are your arrows. So in other words, in this case here, it's going to show arrows at the end of your dimension line. If you want to use open arrows, then you can use that. If you want to use dots, you can use dots. If you want to use ticks, you can use ticks. You know, so this is where you decide how you want how you want the ends of your dimension line to be shown on your drawings. You can have architectural ticks, you can have oblique ticks, and so on. Okay, you can have ticks at one side and dots on the other side. It's up to you. Well, most of the times we like to use the closed arrows, and that's what we're going to be using. Okay, this is how you adjust your arrow size. Okay, this is the center mark for centers, the breaks, and so on. Okay, this is your text. So now, what you always want to do, like we are structural, I mean, we're civil engineers. We always like to have our text aligned with our dimension line, number one. Okay, that's number one. And always you want it when it's okay, you want it centered. Okay, and of course, when it's, you want it to be above your dimension line like that. You don't want it to be centered and break the, so that's how we, like that's in civil engineering, that's how we like. So this is where you adjust all your dimensions, okay? Fit, okay? Overall scale factor. Now, here, what I'm going to do, first of all, the text size. What's the text size? I'm going to put scale factor. Okay, this is where you adjust the overall scale of all these dimension variables, okay? So right now, I'm drawing 50:1. I will put 50, okay? And of course, okay, this is where I put 50. I'm going to see if that works. If it isn't, I'm going to, and this is other things that you can take care of. The primary units, like for example, I'm going to be doing it in decimal. The precision is going to be at 0. I don't want it to 4 decimal places, okay? If you want to suppress any trailing zeros, or you can do that here. And if for whatever reason you want to put both imperial or metric dimensions, well, this is where you can show, okay, show alternative dimensions. If you click here, you can have decimals as well as architectural, and therefore you're going to have both at the same time. So it's going to show both in millimeters as well as in inches. That's up to you. Sometimes you might be doing something in imperial for Europe, and at the same time it's going to go to the States, because I mean, then I'm sorry, in imperial for the States it's going to go to Europe because it's going to be, some parts going to be done in metric. Therefore you can have both dimensions shown at the same time. That's all done here by putting alternative methods. Okay, fit, scale 50. I think it's supposed to be 50. Long time I haven't done this, guys. And once you've adjusted your things, let me go to text. So what's 50? I think, okay. Now, if I go back, I hate this. If I go back and I do a linear dimension from there to there, oh, my overall scale factor is too small. Sorry. Like you're starting to see, it's getting bigger, but it's still too small. Okay, so therefore I got to go back and adjust that. Okay, so I got to go modify the overall scale factor. Okay, where is the overall scale factor? What the hell? What am I doing? 200. What? Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, overall scale factor. This requires some tinkering. Okay, set as current, close. I apologize for the delay, but it's been a while I haven't done this, and I'm trying to remember, trying to do the math in my head. I should have done it on a piece of paper before I did the class. But this text height here should be the same as this one here, so therefore this is completely wrong. And let's go to, okay. Some pops down, erase. Okay, so anyways, so all I'm trying to make you understand is that don't be surprised that if you start using the dimensions, you're gonna have to go and tinker with the dimension variables. Annotate dimension, modify. I just hope I have, anyways, I'm gonna have this figured out by next week, so don't worry about it, okay? We're getting there, okay? So in other words, you can see that it's getting bigger, so it's gonna be more than 200. And you gotta tinker with it until you get the right overall scale factor. And like I said, I don't wanna waste this time. So.
You could click on the number and you could tinker it directly on properties.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right click on the number, or you could just play around with that. Yeah. But the way I do it is I put on property, click it in properties.
You click on it.
Yeah. Escape. Yeah. And exactly. And you could play with the this, not the scale, but the height of the text.
Yeah, but I prefer setting it because this way I'll get the right arrow sizes here. You understand?
Oh, right.
So I'd rather try and tinker with the, like, all I'm saying is that I'm trying to make you understand that once you have your template set up properly, you understand, you can do this only once. And right now, off the top of my head, it's been a while I haven't done this. As a matter of fact, they didn't give me the drawing course last year, so it's 2 years I haven't touched AutoCAD, and I'm trying to remember exactly what the overall scale factor was here. And I think that, let me try 1,000. 0.2. Okay. See, there you go. Is that better? Okay, so guys, like I said,
You
see,
put 1,000 for the scale factor on like the
overall scale factor. In other words, it's going to take all those variables and multiply it by 1,000. So this will become bigger. You understand? The text will become exactly the same height as your text here. Okay. And that's what I wanted to show you. So, and that's where you go in and you tinker around with the values. Okay. Like I said, it's been a while, I haven't done it, but this is exactly what I want to do. Now, I want to show you a couple of things when it comes to dimensioning, okay? And then after that, I'm going to let you guys play around with it. Now, there's a few things, like I'm sure you guys know how to dimension things, but number one, okay? Whenever you're dimensioning, okay, it's always, let me first erase this. Let me erase this. Let me go home, let me erase this dimension. Okay, so I'm gonna go to annotate, okay? So basically, it's always good when you're dimensioning, guys, to always show, even though it's not here on your sketch, it's always good to show, you wanna do a linear dimension, it's always good to show the overall dimension of your structure, okay, or of your building. So therefore, okay, number one, what I want to show you here is that at this point here, okay, at this point here, I don't want my grid lines to be underneath my geometry, because when I'm going to print, I'm going to lose all the benefit of what I did here in terms of offsetting it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have two construction lines. Before I go here, let me go back to home. Okay, escape. I hate the fact that the menu keeps popping up on me, okay? So basically, I'm gonna draw a line here like this. Okay, you don't have to be very careful about this. I'm gonna draw a line here like this, okay? And then I'm gonna draw a line here. Okay, then I'm gonna use a trim command, and I'm gonna trim off these lines, because I don't want those lines to be there, because it's only going to make my drawing worse. So I'm gonna use a trim command, okay? So this is gonna be one cutting edge, and this is gonna be another cutting edge. I'm gonna put enter, and then I'm gonna select the items I wanna trim. So I wanna select these three items here, and I wanna select this item here, and of course, I have to go in here and select this. Oops. For some reason, it's not trimming. So you see, I'm cleaning up my drawing so that those lines underneath aren't there anymore. So I'm going to simply, I can do it from here. Anyways, trim. Trim that. That was one going to retrim. So once I clean that up, the drawing becomes nice and clean. I don't need these construction lines anymore. Okay, and there you go. Now, like I said, when you're actually going to dimension, it's always good, okay, to put the dimensions, the overall dimension in between. So if ever you want to dimension something, I'm going to put here a linear, let me go to annotate. Annotate, okay, so linear dimension. So I'm gonna go from this here, and I'm gonna go over to this point here. And of course, I'm gonna go and place my dimension line. Now this here, guys, okay, so it's always good to give the overall dimensions of your drawing. Even though it's not shown on the drawing, that's number one, okay? The other thing is that you notice that these here, you can either dimension these things individually, okay? In other words, you can, now I'll show you how to dimension them individually, which you can do with AutoCAD, right? Okay, you can, okay, how come that line didn't get trimmed? Okay, hold on a second. I just want to get rid of that line. Oh, I just want to trim this line here. Now that I got rid of it. Okay, now if ever you are dimensioning something that is going to continue, okay, then what you can do is you start off by a linear dimension, let me go to annotate. Okay, start off with a linear dimension. So in other words, I want to go from here to this point here. Okay, and I'm going to place it here, right about there. That's good enough. Now, if ever I want to continue with this thing, then what I can do is I can use this command here called continuous. Okay, if I click here, AutoCAD automatically remembers where you stopped, and then you just can go to the next point and go to the next point. And what AutoCAD does is it lines everything up for you, and you don't have to break your head. And you can go to this point, and so on and so on. So the continuous command is a nice way of getting everything lined up without you having to move it up. But you have to remember that if you're going to use the continuous command, remember in which direction you want to continue. So you start from the furthest point to the left and then move to the right, and then you can continue. Like the same thing here. And of course, the same thing here. So the continuous command is nice because it can very quickly, you can either do it this way, okay? Or sometimes like what you might want to do, I'm going to erase this now, okay? I'm going to erase this. Okay, and what you want to do is okay, what you might want to do is you might want to show, like you can put a linear dimension. Let me go to annotate. What does it matter? Linear. Okay, so I'm going to put a linear dimension from this point to this point, and before I actually put this dimension in, okay. What I can do is I can if you look at the bottom of the command, these are all the different things you can do to your dimensions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say text. Change the text for me, okay? Change the text. And now I can put 4, okay, of course it has to be capped, spaces at 1625 equals 6500. Okay, press enter, and now I can put that wherever I want. Okay, so you can change the text at any time. Okay, that's number one. Now, if for whatever reason you want to move the text over, or you want to manipulate a dimension, you simply click it. Okay, and you can do a number of things. Like here, if you hover over this, you can move text only, so you can move wherever you want. And of course, now I'm in ortho. But if I take my ortho off, I can move, sorry, the ortho's not taken off. I can move wherever I want. I can put it here if I want. If I needed to put, so you can always manipulate whatever dimension you have with AutoCAD. And, excuse me, so I'm gonna, so that's something else. Or you can actually, like if I highlight this, okay, I can actually stretch these things up. Okay, so you can do a number of things, okay? So it's up to you what you need to do, but if you don't, leave the way it is. Sometimes you might put a text in, and you find that the dimension is not where you exactly want it. You can move the text, or you can move something else, and so on and so on. So that's a nice thing about, okay? And basically that's it. As far as, you know, linear text goes. And does anybody have any questions? Now, of course, you should do the same thing here, give the overall dimension, put the dimension here between each bay and so on. We should put the dimension here. So if I wanted to show a linear dimension here, I would go from nearest to this insertion point. And of course, I would place it. And guys, there's no rule on where you want to do it. What's important is that your drawing is clear, it's not cluttered, people can read the information very easily. That's your objective when you're doing a drawing. Okay, so you can put it there, that's good enough, and so on, okay? So there you go. Now, is there something you guys want me to repeat at this point? And guys, don't feel shy. I'll go back and do anything you want. Does anybody want me to repeat something?
Excuse me?
Yes.
How do you put the blue text? Like the W12 by 27?
How do I make it blue?
No, how do you put it like above the line?
Okay, so I'll do it. Okay, so basically, okay, I'll do it here, okay? W12 by, I'll put in the right, what is that? It's supposed to be a W12 by 27, okay. So, okay. So what I like to do is I like to, place things as accurately as possible with AutoCAD, because AutoCAD has this very, very high precision and accuracy, so I like to do that. In this case here, I'm going to go to single line of text, okay? Because I'm only putting a single line of text. Like I said, I can either come here or at the command line, I can type here text. Okay, text. And one of the, okay. Now, once I've typed in the letter text, sometimes I always like to justify to make sure, okay. So here it's already at the center point, but I'm going to justify it anyway. So I'm going to type in the letter J, justify. And of course, I'm going to center my text. Now, I want to center it right along this line here. So where's the middle of this line? I go look for the midpoint. Now, if you look here, as I'm dragging my crosshairs along this entity here, you notice this is nearest, nearest, nearest. And as soon as I see the triangle, oh, I've hit the midpoint. So that's the midpoint of that line, okay? And of course here, the three object snaps that I have either have an endpoint, I have a nearest, like I'm going to be on the line, or I'm going to have a midpoint. So this is where I want to place the text. Now, I worry about, look at my command line. I see that my text height is 200, and that's what I want it to be at this scale. If it's not 200, I would change it here and I would put the value 200. Fair enough? As far as the angle goes, I don't want 90 degrees, so therefore I have to change that to 0, the command line, okay? Now I'm ready to type in my text. So this is a W, we said this was a W 12 by 27. 12 by 27. I click outside the box and it's done. Now, the thing is that the text is sitting right on top of the line here, okay? That is not very good. It doesn't make it very clear when you're going to be printing it. It's going to be hard to read the text and so on, so it's very confusing. So I simply move it. So I use the move command. Here's the move command underneath the modified on the home ribbon, okay, the home tab, the move command. I pick what I want to move, press enter. Then how far do I want to move it? Since I'm putting everything about 50 to 75 millimeters away, I simply pick any point. First of all, I'm going to go back, make sure I'm on ortho. Yeah, I'm on ortho. I pick any point. Tell the program in which direction I want to move. I want to move in this direction, and therefore I give it how much I want to move it for. I'm going to type in the value 75, press enter, and there you go. That dimension now is pushed away from that line by 75 millimeters. Is that a little clearer now? And then the nice thing about it is that once it's placed properly, then when I copy it, it's always going to get copied at 75 millimeters away from any line. Is that okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Is there, guys, I can tell you right now, okay, I would rather you guys work on the drawing, try to complete this as much as possible. And if you hit a snag, let me know so that I can explain to you how to do it. Because like I said, I can spend 3 weeks showing you all these commands, but until you actually try them yourself and like tumble and fall, okay? See, let me just show you a bad practice, okay? A lot of people wouldn't realize this, but you see how this extension line crosses this dimension? That's a no-no because the drawing is not clear. So what I would have to do is I have to come back and clean this up a bit at my final, okay? So I highlight this, right? I take this drag point, I bring it up. Sorry, highlight it, take the drag point, bring it up and make sure it doesn't. Now, the reason why the other line is still there is because this is the extension line for this dimension. So I have to now highlight this dimension, take the drag point, bring it up, and now it's all cleared up, you see? Now, I could have either modified the extension line or I could have moved the text over, but one should not cross the other. The drawing has to be clear, okay? So, what else let me just see. I think, oh yeah, basically. Okay, now, you notice that there's a north arrow on the drawing. Like all drawings should be, like the north of a drawing should always be pointed to the top of it, okay? Now, you can do a number of things. You can go on the website and you can look for north arrows for AutoCAD, and you can download a whole bunch of north arrows and put them into your drawing. Or you can simply draw one yourself and, you know, make it as pretty as possible. It's up to you. And I can show you, for example, that north arrow, okay? It's up to you how you want to do it. And guys, have fun with AutoCAD. You know, like in other words, I'm going to go now, for example, I'm going to change. I'm going to change, I'm going to put my north arrow on objects, okay? So for example, I'm going to take the ortho off and I'm going to start having fun now. Now this just has to be shown graphically. So in other words, my north arrow is going to be pointing this way, okay? And of course, it's going to have, I could make it go like this and perpendicular to that. Now, if I want to fill this in here and make this solid, I can go ahead and use the hatch command. This is the hatch command right here, okay? I make it solid and so I make that solid, okay? And of course, I can come in here and, you know, take either type in a big N or I can make my own N, but if you want, and, you know, I make a little bit of a line here perpendicular to that. And if you want to make sure it's the same size on the other side, you simply use the mirror command. And of course, you know, there's a little north arrow, and if you want, you can put in a stylized N in here, okay? So you can put in a stylized N. Let's see what I have here. Or you can put a stylized N in here. So in other words, you can use your text command, a single line of text, okay, right here. Okay, make this a little bit bigger. You can make it 400, just for, you know, graphics purposes. Angle is 0 for now, and put the letter N, okay. And if you want, once you do that, you can actually rotate your N. Sorry. Doesn't matter where you, okay. And you can rotate your N. And oops, sorry, undo. It's because I have my O snaps on. I should rotate, take my O snaps off because it's gonna, okay. And I can rotate. And guys, this just, you know, this doesn't have to be very precise. And there you go. There you have a nice north arrow. You can, you know, guys, have fun with AutoCAD. I mean, there's certain things that I like to do very, very precisely and place very, very accurately because it helps to, you know, clarify the overall drawings. But then there's other stuff that you should feel free to do free, like what I mean by freehand, without having to be worrying about too much, you understand? I don't know if you like the north arrow. I find it's okay for me. And if you want, like I said, you can go on the website and you can ask for north arrows for AutoCAD. And there's a whole slew there that you can copy and import into your drawing and paste it on your drawing. And then you can have that all the time if you bring it in as a block and so on. So, oh, and of course, if ever Now, if ever, I'm going to show you another AutoCAD shortcut. Okay, so here, for example, second floor framing plan. Okay, now, if ever you're doing a title, okay, for some reason, let's say you want to, I'm doing a single line of text, right? And this, right now, I don't matter where it is, okay? I'm going to justify, and I'm going to say left for now, okay? Now, if I'm doing a single line of text, okay, and I want to start here, I can move this at any time. Here's a single line of text, okay? I'm going to make the height 300 instead of 200 because it's a title. Okay, enter. The angle is 0, okay? Now, if ever you want your text to be underlined after you've typed it on a single line of text, okay? The shortcut for underline, you put percentage U, and now that disappears, and now I'm going to put second floor framing. And then once I click, you notice that the text is automatically underlined. So to get an underline in a single line of text, of course, you simply, like I said, I'll do that again. Okay, so for a single line of text, oh yeah, escape. Okay, so for a single line of text, if ever I want an underline for a single line of text, I start deciding where I want to do my text. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. And of course, before I type anything, I tell the program percentage U for underline, and the program will automatically underline whatever you're typing here as a single line. Now, if ever you're doing multi-line text, which is even easier, okay, so when you're doing multi-line text, right, this is very, very similar. So in other words, I want the text to be between here and there, okay? So here, this is very, very similar to, you know, the word. So if you want to underline it, the nice thing about multi-line text, you have a little bit more, you got a little bit more, choices on what you can do to text, okay? You can underline it there, you can make it bold, you can italicize, and so on, okay? So that's the, that's what's nice about it. So if I want to bold it and I want to italicize it and so on, if I want to underline it, that all gets done here, very similar to Word, okay? And that's how you would do it with a multi-line text. So multi-line text gives you more options of what you can do with the text. Now, since we're talking about text, I want to show you one last thing about text, okay? So far, okay, let me go to annotate, the annotate, sorry. Okay, so here, okay, this is the text that we're using. So in other words, it's a standard text, okay? Okay. Now, here, as far as the font goes, it's an Arial font. It's regular, don't worry about the heights, you define the heights after that. But just to give you an appreciation, okay, these are all the different fonts that are available in AutoCAD, okay? So these are very similar to Word. You have many, okay? One of the fonts that I like to use a lot in AutoCAD, which I find fun, is this one right here. It's called City Blueprint. City Blueprint looks very much like as if you were printing, like printing the stuff by hand. I like to use this font, so I say apply, close, and now everything that you've done has automatically changed to City Blueprint. So if you want to change your font, you simply go to, like, so for example, so you go to annotate, you fly this out, and this is where you change the font, okay? Like I said, you can use any font that you like if you, for example, and here you'll get an idea what the font's gonna look like on your drawing. So if you wanna use that one, it's up to you, okay? And don't forget, guys, you can use one font for one text. You can use one font for another text and so on. But overall, okay. And if you want, so this is where you come in here and you personalize the drawing to your particular, let's call them perks, okay? You want to use this one? I don't know. I wouldn't use that one for a technical drawing. But, you know, like if you, for example, if you like I like City Blueprint because it looks very much like as if you're printing by hand. But sometimes people might say, well, it's not as clear as if I use another font. So it's up to you what you want to use. And you see that a lot of them are very similar to the fonts that you find in Word. You know, you also have the old typical time, yeah, this is Tacoma, which is a nice font, you know, nothing wrong to use this one. And then of course you have, I think there's also Times New Numeral here. So this is also a font that you might want to use. So if you apply this one, close, everything gets changed to that font. It's up to you what you want to use in terms of a font, okay? So you got a number of choices. It's up to you. And like I said, once you change it, all the text that you've put in, okay, will get changed to that font, okay? Now, of course, if you want to change just one for emphasis purposes, you can pick here and then just change the, you know, change that one, change the properties, okay? And where is the, you can change, you can create another style and assign that its own style, okay? So I hope you guys have got a nice overview of what we can do with AutoCAD. Is there anything else you want me to review with you before we call it a day? Because I think you guys are pretty much saturated with, am I right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I know guys.
Yeah, my brain is
It is like, it's fried.
yeah, more than burnt.
Burnt. I'm happy. That means it's a good day. Guys, listen, I do a lot in the first class, but don't forget every class I'm going to, like now, next week I'm gonna lecture for maybe about at most 1 hour, okay? I'm going to be sending you the first assignment through Leah for next week. I might send it to you, like, do you guys want it now so you can start working on it, or do you want it near the beginning?
Sure, we could start working on it.
Yeah, I can.
You want me to send it like tomorrow morning?
Yeah, sure. I mean, theoretically, we're like still like a little bit confined, like staying home and everything. So we have like tons of time.
Okay, but look, what I'm going to do is, okay, what I did is that I've created templates for each different assignment. You know, like when I did this border here, okay? Like I started by showing you how you can create your own template with AutoCAD. Now, for each assignment you're going to be doing, I've already created a template for you. In other words, in that template, all the layers have been created for you. The font size has been already set for you. The dimension, style has already been modified for you. Everything is ready to go. All you got to do is get in there and draw. You follow what I'm saying? So I'm going to send you the template that you can use to do the assignment as well as the assignment itself. Is that okay? So what I suggest you do is that you open the template and then use that to start doing your assignment. You follow what I'm saying? Okay, I'll give you an example. I'll show you what I'm saying. Like here, for example, I'm going to say open, okay? Open drawing. Now I'm going to go and assignment number 1. Okay, open it. Okay, so you see, I've already created for you the template that you would use to do assignment number 1 in. You follow what I'm saying? And in here, I'm going to send you this. I'm going to send you this with the assignment itself. Open this drawing and start drawing with this. So therefore, you'll have the right limits of your drawing. You'll have, like you'll notice I use City Blueprint here. It's up to you. You can leave that or you can change it, okay? If I go home, you're going to see that I've already created most of the layers that you're going to be using to do your drawings. So in other words, here's my grid lines. I got one for, do I have one for bubbles? No, I didn't create one for bubbles. So use grid lines and bubbles so you can enchant. So I've created most of your layers for you already. So you can use this right away, okay? And I've already put assignment number 1 in here for you so that when you print it, it's going to be correct, okay? So I'm going to send you this template here, okay, for assignment number 1. Use that to do your assignment, as well as the assignment itself, which is going to be a sketch that is very similar to this one. And like I said, what I'm going to do next week is talk about the assignment very briefly. I'm going to talk about structural steel so you guys know what you're drawing and what it means and all that. And at the same time, I'm going to probably video just the very beginning of the lecture, whatever I'm talking about. After that, I'm going to stop the video. And after that, I'm just going to sit here and wait for you guys to ask me questions. Sir, how do I do this? How do I do that? Because I've learned from experience that unless I kind of throw you guys into the drawing and you start swimming by yourself, no matter how much I try to show you here on the screen, unless you actually do it yourself, it'll take you a while before you start getting comfortable with it. Okay, and like I said before, AutoCAD and playing a musical instrument are very similar. The more you practice with it, the better you get at it. That's all it is, okay? Like, just to give you an idea, like this, that practice drawing that I gave you, okay? I know that if I would throw that at you, you'd probably take about 5-6 hours to do it, okay? And that doesn't surprise me. But after we've done about 4 or 5 assignments, okay, I can guarantee you that if you go back and do assignment number 1 again, it won't take you 4 or 5 hours anymore. It will probably take you about 2 to 3 hours. So your proficiency and your efficiency with AutoCAD will improve with time as you do more and more of it, okay? And don't forget, guys, it's easy for me because I've been doing it easy for me. I've used AutoCAD for a long time. I know what the commands are. I've already got this, pattern set in my mind. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I know with AutoCAD that the easiest way to do it, I can go from there to there. That is really the hurdle in AutoCAD. Using the command that will require the least amount of time for you to get the result that you're looking for in your drawing. And that's the real challenge with AutoCAD. And like I said, the problem with AutoCAD is that it gives you too many choices, okay? And eventually you will start getting, more and more comfortable with it. And you realize, oh, I'm better off using this command to get that instead of using that command. And I'm going to show you other features of AutoCAD that can help you depending on what you're actually drawing, okay? So I'm sorry, I've really overloaded you on the first day, but I probably covered more today. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I probably covered more today in this one lecture than you probably did in all of Drawings 1. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyways, so now, and like I said, next week, we're going to call it a day pretty soon. Next week, tomorrow, I will take the trouble of sending you both the template and the drawing. Those of you that want to get started, and of course, guys, what I'd like you to do is as you're doing your drawing, like if you have questions, I'm gonna, I want you to share your screen with me and we can, look at it together and I can tell you what you can do in terms of options, okay? And at the same time, I can tell you what you need to correct because I think that that's, something that I want you to start developing. And guys, my other objective with this course is not learning only how to draw with AutoCAD, but my other objective is that learning how to read drawings themselves. I want to improve that feature for you, okay? And you'll see that the assignments I'm going to give you are going to become more and more elaborate. But at the same time, I'm doing it purposely so that you guys can develop a better way of learning how to read drawings more quickly. Like for you guys, don't worry about, I'm having a hard difficulty looking at a plan view and relating to it. some people develop the skill a little bit faster, some people develop a little bit slower. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take you, but I'm telling you, eventually, guys, it's all going to start coming, you know. Like after working with drawings for over 40 years, guys, believe it or not, when I see a plan view, I don't see it in 2 dimensions anymore. I see it in 3 dimensions, okay? And you guys will develop the same skill with time. But that's only by, being exposed more and more to drawings, and you will start seeing and relating a 2-dimensional drawing. And the nice thing about Rivet is that we will be actually creating a model in 2 dimensions, and then at a click of one of the icons, you'll be able to see it in 3 dimensions right away. So that's one of the nice things about Rivet, is that it goes from 2 dimensions to 2 dimensions in just one little command, okay? But that's all in due time. So let's worry about AutoCAD for now, and then we'll move on to Rivet, and you'll see the difference between AutoCAD and Rivet, because you'll have started to understand how to use AutoCAD properly, and you see the big difference when we're using a Rivet program versus an AutoCAD program. And that's going to be the second half of the course. Okay, so basically, guys, keep in mind, if the guys that haven't looked at the course outline, it's very simple. We have 2 exams, okay? The first exam is worth 25%. The second exam is worth 25%, so that's 50%. And then we're going to have 9 assignments. Each assignment is going to be worth 5% of your final grade. And the last 5%, well, if you do not show up to my class and you show up late, you get penalized. And that's what I use the last 5% for. So that's how your final grade is going to come up. And remember, because of the summative assessment, you have to have a passing grade. You have to have a passing grade on both exams in order to pass the course, blah, blah, blah. And I can tell you guys, out of all the years that I've been teaching drawings, okay, it's not because of me, but I've only had, I don't know how many people I've taught over the last, since 1999 to today. That's well over 21 years. I've only had 1 person fail my course. Now, in that case, I can't blame myself for the person failing. He probably didn't want to put in the effort to learn. But I can guarantee you, if you guys want to learn how to use this thing properly, I'll be more than happy to show you how to do it. Fair enough? So on that note, I'm going to stop. First of all, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop the video.